What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was neglected and abused until the Shinigami gave him a deal? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. The Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, stood gazing over the village of Konoha no Sato with a troubled expression. Just a few hours ago his favorite surrogate grandson, Naruto Uzumaki, had stolen the forbidden of sealing for reasons unknown. He knew the young Uzumaki was pretty upset after failing the graduation exam. With this being his third failing, he would have to drop out of the ninja academy and go through the regular schooling systems. However, he could not understand how Naruto had gained knowledge of the Forbidden Scroll in the first place. It was a little-known fact that the Forbidden Scroll of Sealing was actually a Namikaze clan scroll, as it had been created by Minato Namikaze himself upon his ascension to the title of Hokage. Also, with the fact that Naruto was son of both Konoha's Yellow Flash and Kushina Uzumaki, the Crimson Death, it was actually his clan inheritance when he became of age. The death of Minato had taken a heavy toll on his heart, but he had no idea of the whereabouts of Kushina. It had been reported that she had died in battle after giving birth to Naruto, but her body was never discovered amongst the corpses in the aftermath of Kyuubi's attack. If Kushina had remained alive to take care of Naruto, things may have turned out differently. However, I still believe there were other factors in her untimely disappearance, but I can't prove anything even after all this time. Hiruzen thought. His thoughts quickly returned to Naruto as a small smile graced his features. He was one of a select few that was aware of the tremendous amount of untapped potential that Naruto possessed. It became apparent to him that Naruto was far more intelligent than he let, but chose to hide behind a mask of false happiness and fake smiles. He knew this because some of his most trusted Anbu had taken it upon themselves to train the boy when he was younger in the shinobi arts while he was in their care. Naruto's mask was a direct result of all the hate and anger that had been directed at him at a young age by the arrogant and ignorant villagers at a young age. The boy used his mask to deceive the civilians as well as many shinobi that he was no threat to them by playing the role of a hyperactive, loudmouth idiot, which had even fooled him at one point. It pained his being that the villagers could not respect his successor, the Yondaime Hokage's wish that the boy be seen as a hero for his burden of being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yuko by keeping the beast sealed away inside his own body. He understood that the villagers suffered a great loss of their loved ones, but their desire to kill the boy because of his burden was something he could never condone. He tried to protect the boy as best he could, but he could only do so much for one individual. When he had returned to office, the council had already stripped him of some his power, but luckily he had not delayed any longer to retain his former position. If he had, then he would have been nothing more than a glorified figurehead. He could not undo the damage that had been done, so what remained of his power was used to protect Naruto. He was grateful to those amongst the clan heads such as the Aburame, Akamichi, Hyuga, Inuzuka, and Yamanaki, as well his loyal Anbu that recognized the boy for who he was even if they had no knowledge of his true legacy as the son of the fourth. However, there were many that infuriated him, such as Minato's student and son the White Fang, Tsukumo Hitaki, Kakashi Hitaki. The former Anbu captain could only see Naruto as the Kyuubi in human skin that took away his sensei and father figure. He was disappointed that Kakashi was no different than the villagers and kept him away from Naruto as much as possible. He had hoped that Kakashi would have supported Naruto and when time for him to become a genin came would be able to advance his shinobi training, but his hopes were in vain. Hiruzen turned away from the window to return to his desk to where his viewing orb lay to check in on Naruto. He couldn't repress the shudder that passed through his frame as he recalled how Naruto had managed to escape with the Forbidden Scroll. If he hadn't returned to collect his pipe, who knows how long it would have been before he had learned of the absence of the scroll. He was ashamed to think that he, Hiruzen Sarutobi, god of shinobi, was taken down by Naruto's Oiroke no Jutsu technique. He was keeping in mind that what normal male wouldn't be knocked out by a major nosebleed after viewing a beautiful, curvy, and naked blonde standing before them. He was lucky he had only been out for only a few minutes, but Naruto had managed to create the ultimate anti-pervert ninjutsu. If we can recover the Forbidden of Sealing, then I will have to label that jutsu down as an S-rank genjutsu. Hiruzen thought, tilting his hat to shade his eyes. Such a terrible jutsu that can bring any man to his knees, no matter how powerful that individual may be, will be devastating in the wrong's hand. That wish bring a man to his knees in an instant. Shaking away such irrelevant thoughts, he searched the village for Naruto's unique chakra signature and was pleased that he was only just outside the perimeter of the village at the moment. Focusing on the orb, he brought up an image of Naruto in a clearing, and from the looks of it he had been looking over the forbidden scroll for quite some time. It was at that moment, Iruka Amino came across Naruto and Hiruzen watched the following proceedings. Moments earlier, Naruto arrived in a small clearing just outside of the walls of Konoha with the forbidden scroll strapped to his back. The young Uzumaki had been devastated earlier when he failed the genin exams for the third and final time. He had trained so hard to perfect the 3 basic techniques but couldn't perform the Bunshin jutsu because he always managed to overload his clones with too much chakra, which resulted in half-dead Bunshins. He had thought his dream to become Hokage was over when Mizuki sensei had come to inform of a makeup exam. He had been suspicious at first since he knew that Mizuki had hated him because of the fox, but he had seemed to genuinely want to help him, so he gave him the benefit of the doubt. However, now that he thought about it, it seemed rather strange that the old man had been shocked by his appearance in his office. However, the chance at finally becoming a genin had pushed all doubts aside and he charged straight ahead in order to reach his dreams. Upon arriving in the clearing, he immediately began looking over the scroll. Okay, Mizuki-sensei said I only had to learn 1 jutsu from the scroll and I will have passed the makeup test. Naruto said, aloud. Upon seeing the first jutsu, Naruto had to resist cursing Kami for conspiring against him since the first jutsu was the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique. Bunshins were his absolute worst skill and it seemed he could never escape that horrid jutsu. He began reading over the description of the jutsu and quickly realized the difference in the Bunshin and Kage Bunshin. The Kage Bunshin no Jutsu is forbidden kinjutsu that creates solid clones that are capable of direct contact. Kage Bunshins are exact copies of the user and are capable of performing jutsu unlike the normal Bunshin jutsu. They are capable of independent actions based on the personality of the caster of the jutsu. Kage Bunshins require massive amounts of chakra, which is then divided evenly amongst the user and number of clones generated. An interesting side effect of Kage Bunshins is that whatever the clones learned during their lifetime is transferred back to the user themselves. This jutsu is recommended for only Junin and above due to the high risk of chakra exhaustion that may result in death. Naruto read, mentally. Naruto cocked his head to the side as he contemplated the use of such an advanced technique before deciding to give it a shot. Besides, it only required a single hand seal and lots of chakra, which he had plenty of. With that thought in mind, Naruto set out to conquer his most troublesome jutsu ever. 30 minutes later, Naruto stood in the middle of the clearing panting heavily after finally managing to complete the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He was about to store away the scroll when an idea came to him. Why should he just learn 1 scroll when he could learn as many as he needed while he had the scroll? He knew that his repertoire of jutsu was seriously lacking, so why not learn more? Pulling out a blank scroll that he normally used for planning out his pranks and began to copy as many interesting justice that he could before Mizuki arrived to grade him. It didn't take long to fill the scroll as he had picked up quite a few offense as well as defensive jutsu such as Kaden, Karyu Enden and Suijinheki. He had just finished copying the last jutsu and placing his scroll back into his pouch when a chakra signature drew his attention. He quickly rolled up the scroll and secured just as Iruka emerged from the trees and landed in the clearing. Naruto, what were you thinking when you decided to steal the forbidden scroll? Do you have any idea how much trouble you have caused? Iruka yelled, utilizing his famous big head jutsu. Naruto blinked as he cocked his head to the side to analyze Iruka before slapping on his mask. The Chunin instructor was surprised that Naruto didn't seem to show any signs of regret for his actions, and this worried him. Hey, Iruka-sensei, since I managed to learn a jutsu from the scroll, that means that I can become a genin, right? Naruto exclaimed, excitedly. Iruka was taken aback by Naruto's statement. What gave Naruto the idea that this was some sort of makeup exam? Iruka took a quick once-over of Naruto. It does look like he has been training this entire time, but what's really going on? I better just ask him and find out what he knows. Naruto, Who told you could become a genin by learning a jutsu from the Forbidden Scroll? Iruka inquired. Mizuki-sensei told me that if I learned at least one jutsu from the scroll then, you would let me graduate and become a genin. I already learned this really cool jutsu, so doesn't that mean that I passed the test? Naruto replied with a foxy grin. Why would Mizuki tell Naruto something like that, and I don't sense that Naruto is lying, so why? Iruka's thoughts were cut short by the sound of objects coming towards them. A quick flash of steel revealed several kunai on a direct course for an unsuspecting Naruto. Acting purely on instinct, Iruka tackled Naruto to the ground, but in the process the kunai lodged themselves into his back, drawing a pained gasp from the brown-haired chunin. Naruto let out a grunt as he landed on his back and turned wide eyes onto Iruka was hanging above him with a pained grimace on his face. The blonde found himself confused, but a voice quickly drew his voice to a new arrival. Iruka, I don't know why you chose to save the brat, but it doesn't matter now. Mizuki said, from a tree branch. Naruto, give me the Forbidden Scroll. Naruto was even more confused. Hey, Mizuki-sensei, why did you attack Iruka-sensei like that? Is this part of the test as well? No, Naruto, this isn't some sort of test. Mizuki tricked you into stealing the Forbidden Scroll for him. Iruka said in a strained tone. What do you mean? So, this means that I don't get to pass and become a genin? Naruto said in disbelief. Why do you think I would want to help you, demon brat? Mizuki said then, smirked. Naruto, do you want to know why everyone including Iruka hates you? Iruka looked at Mizuki in alarm. Mizuki, you mustn't tell him. It's because you are the Kyuubi no Yuko that attacked the village 13 years ago, and that's why everyone hates you. Mizuki sneered. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. Why wasn't I ever told any of this? It's quite simple, because the Hokage knew that if you remembered who you were then you would seek revenge for being turned into a human. However, I'm not going to give you a chance since I'm going to kill you here and everyone shall praise me as a hero. Mizuki said as he gripped one of the Fuma shurikens attached to his back. Iruka struggled to his feet. Naruto, take the Forbidden Scroll and get out of here. Naruto slowly got to his feet but made no attempt to move. Mizuki saw this and immediately threw the giant shuriken at the shell-shocked blonde. Iruka quickly pushed Naruto away as he dodged the deadly projectile. Shocked out of his trance, Naruto took one last glance at the two men before picking up the scroll and taking to the trees. Mizuki glared at Iruka. I don't know why you helped the demon brat, but once I'm done with you then I'm going after him. Not if I stop you here and now, Mizuki Teme. Iruka exclaimed as he drew a kunai. The brown-haired chunin dashed towards his former friend in hopes to give Naruto enough time to get away and return with help. The only question was, could he hold out long enough with his current injuries? Meanwhile, Naruto felt confident that he had managed to gain quite a bit of distance, stopped and took refuge in a tree. Setting the scroll down in his lap, his thoughts wandered back over to what Mizuki had said, and it began to make sense as to why he was hated. Now I know why everyone always glares at me and used to beat me when I was younger. It's because I'm the fox that killed everyone, but Gigi told me that fox was killed by the Yondaime, so why would he lie to me? Did he want to become a ninja so that he gives me a mission so that I could get killed, but he was always so nice? I don't know who to believe anymore. Naruto thought as he sank into the depths of despair. A sudden noise drew his attention to area below him, but he didn't dare move for fear of being discovered. He had no way of telling if it was Iruka or Mizuki, but he could clearly feel two chakra signatures and feared for his life. His ears suddenly perked up as he clearly heard voices despite the distance from his spot to the ground. Iruka, if you had just let me kill the demon brat you wouldn't be in this situation right now. You know that he's the Kyuubi and is merely biding his time until he can take his revenge on the village for what the Yondaime did. That's exactly the type of thing that a demon would do. Mizuki said. You're right, that's exactly what a demon would do. Naruto's breath hitched in his throat as tears sprung forth. However, that's not something that Naruto would ever do. He loves this village more than anyone and would never harm its people. He has the potential to become the greatest ninja this village has ever known. He might be a hyperactive, loudmouth knucklehead, but he is also my best student and I will do everything I can to make sure that he realizes his dream. He has put up with the misguided hatred for so long and I'm proud to know that I've had the chance to be a part of his life, even if this is where my road ends. Mizuki's glare only intensified. Fine, if you want to die as a demon lover, then I'll kill you now then, finish the brat. He grasped his remaining Fuma shuriken and began spinning it until it resembled a giant buzzsaw. Iruka could only stare helplessly as his former friend prepared to hurl the deadly projectile at him. So, this is how it ends for me. I never even got the chance to apologize to Naruto for the way that I used to treat him. Maybe, my death will atone for all the wrongs that I've ever committed against him. Iruka thought with a final resolution. He gently closed his eyes and awaited his final moments out with a small smile on his face. However, a sudden grunt of pain caused his eyes to snap open just in time to witness Mizuki flying to the ground after Naruto had driven a knee into the side of silver-haired Chunin's head. Mizuki managed to right himself but had lost his grip on his weapon as he landed in a crouched position. He glared up at the orange-clad youth that was glaring at him with icy blue eyes. "Don't you dare lay a hand on my sensei or I'll kill you." Naruto growled out. Mizuki laughed. "You think that a snot-nosed brat like you can go up against me? In your human form you don't stand a chance against me, Kyuubi brat." Naruto didn't reply as he removed the forbidden scroll from his back and set it down against the tree. Flaring his chakra, the blonde container brought his hands up into a cross seal as he prepared to unleash his latest jutsu. Taiju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto called out. A massive cloud of smoke immediately surrounded the clearing for a few moments, but when it cleared, Iruka and Mizuki could only gape in amazement. Hundreds of Narutos could be seen, everyone creating a veritable wall of orange-clad blondes. Iruka could only stare at his student as he realized that this was not the regular Bunshin jutsu but the Kage Bunshin, which was considered a Junin-level technique. He couldn't help but feel proud of his student at accomplishing such a feat. "Get ready, Mizuki Teme. We're going to pay you back with interest." The Naruto clones all chorused together. Mizuki could only stare in fear as all the Narutos began to descend towards him before his screams of pain echoed throughout the forest as he was pummeled. A few moments later, a completely decimated Mizuki lay twitching on the ground as all of the Kage Bunshins vanished in a huge poof of smoke. Naruto turned his gaze over to Iruka and with a foxy grin flashed the injured Chunin a victory sign. "How is that, Iruka-sensei?" Naruto asked, cheekily. Iruka chuckled. "Come here and close your eyes, Naruto. I have a special gift for you for stopping Mizuki." Naruto happily bounded over to Iruka and closed his eyes as he waited for Iruka to give him his special gift. He felt his goggles being removed before the feeling of cloth being wrapped around his head. Slowly, he reached up to his forehead and felt the cool metal of a Hite 8 before his eyes shot open in surprise. He saw Iruka holding his goggles in his right hand while his own Hite 8 was strangely absent from his own forehead. He couldn't stop the face-splitting grin that overcame his expression as Iruka smiled back at him. "Congratulations, Naruto. You've earned the right to become a true shinobi of Konoha." Iruka said, his voice thick with pride. Naruto quickly enveloped the older nin in a hug as he realized he was one step closer to fulfilling his dream. However, the touching moment was suddenly shattered by an animalistic grunt from behind Naruto. Both nins shifted their gaze over to sound and were shocked by the sight that greeted them. Mizuki was standing once again, but this time he was covered by a dome of purple chakra. They could only watch in shock as the silver-haired nin began to undergo a startling transformation. His muscles bulged as he began to grow in height while fur began to cover his body. His clothes were shredded till on his tattered pants remained. As his transformation was completed, Mizuki had gained the appearance of a hulking man-tiger. "You thought I was done, Kyuubi brat? With the power that I've gained from Orochimaru-sama I am invincible," Mizuki proclaimed. With that said, the former nin dashed forward with his claws prepared to rend his two preys to shreds. Thinking quickly, Naruto pushed Iruka away but couldn't move quickly enough to dodge the transformed Mizuki. Iruka could only watch in horror as Mizuki plunged his arm deep into Naruto's chest, just missing his heart. With a sickening squelch, Mizuki pulled Naruto off his arm before tossing towards Iruka, where he landed at the injured Chunin's feet. Baring his fangs, Mizuki began to stalk towards the terror-stricken Iruka with the intent to end his life. As the life began to slowly leave Naruto's body, a twist of fate made itself known with the intent to grant the young Uzumaki with power beyond his wildest dreams. Within Naruto's mindscape, the feared Kyuubi no Yuko gazed down at the floating form of its container with a steady gaze. The great beast was awakened when Naruto had received the injury and the mindscape that represented its caged being began to crumble at an alarming rate. The Crimson Kitsune quickly replayed the events that led up to this moment and could only frown at the ignorance of the human known as Mizuki. Despite its terrible reputation, Kyuubi was deeply impressed by its container's willingness to sacrifice his own life for another. Realizing that if the brat died then its existence would end, as well decided to give Naruto something that was rightfully his. Because of the sealing performed by the Yondaime, a power had been locked away within the seal that bound it to Naruto's soul. However, now was the time to unleash the power upon the world once again. Red chakra slowly seeped from the bars and engulfed Naruto's seemingly lifeless form. You had best be grateful of what I'm about to do for you, Kit. Now take your rightful power and crush this pathetic ninja that dares to think he can defeat my vessel. Kyuubi growled out. With a sudden gasp of air, Naruto's mindscape quickly shifted to a frozen wasteland with a few sakura trees. Naruto slowly opened his eyes to see only a red haze that engulfed his vision, but at the same time a surge of pain engulfed his entire being. However, the pain only lasted for a brief moment before the red haze vanished as its purpose was done. The young Uzumaki slowly got to his feet as he gazed at his surroundings with awe. So where was he now? The only place that had snow, according to what he'd been taught, was the frigid Yuki no Kuni, the land of snow. Even Yuki no Kuni, however, had never been reported to have sakura trees covered in full bloom. If he wasn't in the land of snow, one of the only places that suffered through winter, then where could he be? On this plain of never-ending ice and snow, the blonde thought. If this is what death is supposed to be like, I guess now all of my pain will finally end. So, a deep voice, like the rolling thunder, spoke. Nearly jumping out of his skin, Naruto turned at near light speed, coming face to face with a huge blue dragon. You're finally here. Its scales were smooth and slick and reflected the minuscule light perfectly, which gave them an ice-like shine. Atop its head was a crown of spikes, each of which jutted backwards like shards of broken glass. Its nostrils were thin and narrow, almost serpentine, but its breath did not leave clouds of condensation behind. Tell me, can you hear my name? The dragon moved closer, its glowing red eyes boring into his own. Can you call out to me, to Hiranmaru? Before Naruto could give a reply, a soft, feminine voice reached his ears. So, it is finally time for you to claim what it is yours. Shifting his gaze once again, Naruto found himself gazing at beautiful woman dressed in an ornate kimono of crimson red with pink sakura petals scattered across it while tied with a pink obi. Her light pink eyes gazed at him with warmth and compassion while her dark hair cascaded uninhibited down across her shoulders to stop midway down her back. Naruto felt the heat rush to his cheeks as he stared at the beautiful woman before him, which caused her to giggle. Tell me, young one, can you hear my name? The woman tilted her head, her pink eyes boring into his. Can you call out the name of your will to protect others, to Senbon Sakura? Is that what I should call the both of you? Naruto asked as his gaze shifted between the two entities before him. His voice was low and quavering with fear and awe as his eyes were wide and his breathing came out in shaky rasps while his heart thumped loudly. Can I call you Hiranmaru and Senbon Sakura? Hiranmaru seemed to grin, baring 2 rows of shiny, carnivorous teeth. So, you can hear the both of us after so long. For so long we have waited for the day when can be of service to you. To be your sword and shield to protect you from your enemies. Senbon Sakura said as she moved closer to him. Naruto could only stare as the dragon and woman came to him. Then, he felt warmth permeate his body as the woman embraced him from behind to rest her chin atop his own head. Hiranmaru coiled his massive serpentine body around the two until he hovered in front of Naruto's face as he gazed down at the boy before him. I don't understand what's going on. Is this what death is supposed to be like? Naruto asked in confusion. No, Naruto, this is not death, as you are still very much alive. The Kyuubi is using his chakra to repair the damage to your body while you are in a state of suspension. Because of the Shikifujin that was placed upon you to contain you, it sealed away both myself as well as Senbon Sakura. Hiranmaru replied. Wait, Mizuki-sensei said that I was the Kyuubi. Naruto exclaimed in alarm. My dear Naruto, you are not the Kyuubi no Yuko. When the Kyuubi was defeated, the Yondaime utilized the Shikifujin to seal the soul of the Kyuubi into you by summoning the Shinigami to sever his soul from his body. You are merely the container of his soul as well as all of his infinite power. However, now that we have been unsealed then, our power is also yours. Senbon Sakura replied. Naruto was about to ask another question but he was quickly cut off by Hiranmaru as he knew that there were other matters of great importance to take care of. Naruto, we know that you have many questions but you must now use our power to save the one precious to you named Iruka. Hiranmaru said. Naruto's eyes widened as he completely forgotten that he was in his current situation because he had tried to save Iruka from Mizuki Teme. I have to go back and save Iruka-sensei from that traitor Mizuki Teme. Tell me how I can use your power to save Iruka-sensei. As soon as you leave this place you will know how to use our power to save him. Senbon Sakura replied. Now, it is time that you return to show the world the awakening our true power. Naruto felt the warmth of Hiranmaru and Senbon Sakura vanished as he was thrust from his mindscape and back to the real world. Kyuubi chose that moment to make an appearance as it gazed at the two beings before shifting its attention to the outside world through Naruto's senses. The very foundation of the shinobi world was about to be thoroughly shaken up by Naruto's ascension to power. In the real world, Mizuki was almost to Iruka when a sudden pressure filled the clearing making it hard for him to move. Iruka was also feeling the pressure and had a great difficulty in breathing. However, his eyes were wide with shock as he saw the unbelievable happening right before his very eyes. Naruto had stood back to his feet and was slouched forward with his head hung low. The deadly wound in his chest was rapidly closing until it left only unmarred skin. Both men could only stare in disbelief as the formerly dead blonde was standing before them as if he not just been at death's door. Slowly, the blonde raised his head to glare at the transformed Mizuki as the pressure was steadily beginning to increase. With a sudden jerk, Naruto threw his head back as a scream was released from his throat and his form was engulfed by white light. When the light died down, Naruto stood before the two now holding twin swords in his hands. The sword in his right hand had the hilt was wrapped in azure cloth and the cap at the bottom appeared to be made of some sort of bronze, or perhaps even gold. The handguard just beneath the blade was made in the design of a four-pointed star, also appearing to be composed of gold. The blade itself was an oddity as well. The metal gleamed with a soft silver glint that belied its true purpose and the steel appeared to be as smooth as glass. Unlike the standard ninja sword, like a kodachi or a ninjutsu, the blade had majestic curve to it and was quite long. It seemed to be the size of an ordinary katana, which was a big sword for someone of Naruto's stature. The sword in his left hand had the hilt wrapped in a light pink cloth with a cap that also appeared to be made of bronze or gold material. The handguard was made in the design of a square with four L-shaped holes also appearing to be gold. The blade was also an oddity in the same fashion as the first sword that gleamed in the moonlight with a soft silver glint. Mizuki quickly got over his fear as he glared at the blonde. So, you still think that you can stand against me, Kyuubi brat? Even with those swords they are nothing more than toothpicks compared to power I've received from Orochimaru-sama. Naruto could feel the indignation come from both Hiranmaru and Senbon Sakura and their demands to strike Mizuki down for his insults. He gazed upon Mizuki and for a moment the transformed nin felt a tremendous pressure upon his being that took his breath away. The pressure soon vanished as Naruto his left hand to bring the sword vertically before him as a sudden command came to his mind. Chire, Senbon Sakura, Naruto exclaimed. Scatter, thousand cherry blossoms. Iruka and Mizuki could only watch in amazement as the blade began to glow a brilliant pink before the blade slowly dissolved into thousands of slender, petal-like blades. The blades were mostly invisible to the eyes of both nins, so there appeared to be only a few pink petals that swirled around Naruto in a protective manner. Mizuki quickly got over his shock as he once again sneered at Naruto. Well, isn't that a pretty little light show, and here I thought I was going to see some of the power of the great Kyuubi no Yuko before I killed you. I guess I'll just hurry and finish the both of you so I can get out of here with Scroll before the others arrive. Mizuki said as he charged Naruto. A smirk appeared on Naruto's face and with a single mental command the deadly blades of Senbon Sakura shot towards the charging man tiger. Mizuki paid them no mind as he completely dismissed the threat that they posed and ensured his imminent death at Naruto's hands. Mizuki's mad charge was quickly halted as the petals began to slash into him before he was engulfed a wall of pink petals. When the wall of petals receded, there was nothing that remained of the traitor Mizuki except for a few bloodstains that littered the ground. With its purpose fulfilled, the petals reformed into a blade as Naruto dropped his hand to his side. The consequence of Mizuki's death quickly overcame him as he dropped to his knees and deposited his lunch onto the ground. Having finally gotten over his shock, Iruka painfully shuffled over to Naruto before placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Naruto looked at his father figure with a haunted look in his eyes. "Iruka-sensei, I killed Mizuki-sensei," Naruto said in a haunted tone. "I really am the Kyuubi just like everyone thinks I am. This is a dilemma that all shinobi face," he started in the kindest, most comforting tone he could gather. "We ask ourselves whether the killing we do was right. Should we have taken a life? Know this, there is very little black or white in our world. You are not a monster. You killed a traitor that threatens our very way of life. You didn't just kill, you protected. You didn't kill indiscriminately, for pleasure. You drew no pleasure from the fact that you killed. It never gets any easier, but you learned to steel yourself. You are worried about what you felt when you killed Mizuki Teme. Don't forget the feeling of regret that you feel because you're human. For the day you stop feeling anything for the people you kill, you will stop being human and become a true monster." Naruto visibly calmed at his words, considering this piece of wisdom, and accepting it as the truth. He was also reassured by the spirits of his blades that he did the right thing, which caused a smile to grace his features. This was the path that he chose to follow, and to protect those that were precious to him he would embrace the true meaning of being a shinobi of Konoha. "Thanks a lot, Iruka-sensei," Naruto chirped. Iruka smiled as he ruffled Naruto's hair. "Think nothing of it, Naruto. Now, let's go take the scroll back to the Hokage so we can explain what happened." Naruto nodded as he picked up his swords that were both now secured in black sheaths for each blade. For a moment, both wondered where they came from, but Naruto shrugged as Iruka went to pick up the scroll of sealing. A sudden noise drew their attention just as two Anbu landed in the clearing. Naruto quickly recognized the two as Kat, Yugo Izuki, and Tiger, Yamato or Tenzo, whom had protected him when he was younger. "Amino-san and Uzumaki-san, we are to escort the two of you as well as the forbidden scroll back to the Hokage," Yugo said. Both nodded and followed the two Anbu back to Konoha, where Iruka hoped that Naruto wouldn't get into too much trouble after they explained the situation to the Sandaime. It didn't take them long to reach the walls of Konoha, where all four stopped before Tenzo placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and the four shushened to the Hokage's office. The four appeared in a puff of smoke before Tenzo and Yugo retreated into the shadows to watch the proceedings. Iruka and Naruto had expected the Sandaime to be angered at Naruto, but the hokage had a proud smile as he gazed at his surrogate grandson. He had watched the entire event from when Naruto had first arrived in the clearing, so he knew the full story of what took place. He was proud of Naruto, but at the same time he was curious of the two blades that Naruto possessed. It reminded him the sword that Minato had used before, but at the same time its abilities were vastly different. However, he would worry about that later because now he had to resolve the current situation. "Tiger, inform all members of the search party that the forbidden scroll of sealing has been recovered," Sarutobi ordered. A quick, "hi," was his response as Tenzo shushened away to carry out his assigned task before things got even more out of hand. Hiruzen focused back on Naruto. "Naruto-kun, please explain to me why you chose to steal the forbidden scroll of sealing." Naruto, as he began explaining the events from Mizuki approaching him after the academy up until his defeat of the traitor, with Iruka supplying his own input. "I'm too lazy to write out all the details, but you know the story from canon." Hiruzen nodded, even though he was aware that Naruto had neglected to mention the fact that he had copied a few jutsu, but they were anything dangerous, so he would allow him to keep them. He knew the boy would exercise caution when it came down to learning the jutsu, so he wasn't too particularly worried about him hurting himself. "Thank you, Naruto-kun, and I would like to congratulate on your first A-rank mission by stopping Mizuki from escaping with the forbidden scroll," Sarutobi said with pride. Naruto flashed him a foxy grin which caused Iruka to ruffle his hair, affectionately causing the blonde to pout. Hiruzen couldn't help feeling proud of those that had come to accept his surrogate grandson, but he had other matters to speak to the blonde at the moment. He cleared his throat to gain the full attention of the two nins before him, and once he had their attention he shifted his focus to Iruka. Iruka, I'm grateful of all of your assistance tonight, but you should hurry to the hospital to get treated for your injuries. I'm surprised you haven't passed out from blood loss, but I can't have one of my shinobi neglecting to get properly treated. I have some things to discuss with Naruto-kun, so get yourself patched up immediately. Sarutobi ordered. Iruka nodded, and with a quick shushin he was gone, leaving only Naruto, Sarutobi, and Yugo in the office. The aged Kage sent a meaningful glance to Yugo, who quickly performed a privacy jutsu. Sarutobi returned his gaze back to Naruto, who seemed to understand the seriousness of the situation as he had dropped his cheerful mask. His blue eyes stared at the Hokage in a calculating manner, and Hiruzen knew this was the true Naruto that he had come to know. I take it that now that I'm a genin of Konoha that you have some things to discuss with me, Gigi? Naruto asked in a monotone. Sarutobi nodded. Naruto-kun, don't you think that it's about time that you dropped your mask? I know that you feel that you need it in order for you to be accepted by the citizens of the village, but you are now a fully instated ninja of the village. You no longer needed to hide your skills as much as you used to. I'm not so sure that's a good idea, Gigi. If everyone thinks that I'm getting stronger, then they will have more reason to hate me. Now that I know about the Kyuubi, I'm even more afraid to let others see the real me. It was bad enough I had to hide my skills during the academy so that the instructors would stop trying so hard to sabotage me. Now that I'm a ninja, I don't want my teammates to get involved should the council try to send me on a mission that may get me killed. Naruto replied. He's probably still thinking of what happened to Kanae all of those years ago and still blames himself for what happened. However, I will no longer allow that bigotry of this village to stunt Naruto from being the shinobi that Minato wanted him to be. Hiruzen thought. You won't have to worry about that, Naruto-kun, since I will personally be handing out such missions and I will override any attempts by the council. However, I believe you continue to hide your skills, then it will make it harder for you to gain the acceptance of others. It will come a time when you will have to reveal all of the skills that you have been taught, and others will need to know how you operate in order for you to form an effective team. After all, we base our principles on teamwork in order to successfully complete a mission, or have you forgotten all of your lessons? Hiruzen said, then smirked. Don't forget that if you want to take my job, then you have to show that you possess wisdom as well as strength to handle the title of Hokage. Naruto sighed. Being Hokage is still my dream, but I'm scared of what others think of me, Gigi. I've tried so hard to be accepted for something I never knew of, but now that I know why everyone hated me for so long, I'm even more terrified to show the real me. I know that fear and hatred can make people do irrational things. That was why I created my mask, to make people realize I wasn't a threat to them. If it wasn't for you and the others that helped me when I was younger, then I don't know where I would be right now. I understand what you mean, but I want you to have faith in others, Naruto-kun. After all, you can't go through life by yourself if you truly want to survive long enough to reach your dreams. Sarutobi said. Naruto paused to consider the words of the elderly Kage. He knew that his surrogate grandfather was right, and he was really tired of hiding behind his mask. He had been hiding behind it for so long that sometimes it was hard to distinguish the true Naruto Uzumaki from the happy-go-lucky persona that he had created. Maybe if he let his mask slip just a little bit, then he could see if others would accept him for who he truly was. Taking a deep breath, Naruto focused his gaze on the sandaime as he came to a decision that would ultimately affect his future in Konoha. Okay, Gigi, I'll do it and show others who I truly am, but only a little at first, until I feel that I've come to truly trust my comrades. Naruto said with his foxy grin. Besides, it will be fun to show everyone that they can't just push me around anymore. Sarutobi smiled. That's all that I ask that you do, Naruto-kun. Now, you've had a pretty long night, so I suggest that you go home and get some rest. Team selection will be in 1 week, so use that time as you see fit to prepare yourself for your new lifestyle. Naruto nodded and once more smiled at his surrogate grandfather before turning to exit the office to get some much-needed rest. Once the blonde was gone, Yugo released the jutsu before appearing from the shadows to stand before the sandaime. Hiruzen released a heavy sigh as he thought of all the events that forced Naruto to adopt that mask in the first place. Turning his gaze to the cat-masked Anbu, as he knew that she had her own views to contribute about Naruto's situation and wanted to hear what she had to say. So, what do you think about all of this? Sarutobi asked. It's hard to say, Hokage-sama. Naruto has become quite strong over the years, both mentally as well as physically. I still greatly respect him for being able to put up with all the abuse over the years and remain loyal to the village. I'm not sure I could have gone through the same as him and not used the power of the Kyuubi to destroy this entire village. His character is what has gained the respect of myself as well as much of the Anbu and other shinobi of Konoha." Yugo replied. Sarutobi nodded. The civilians just don't realize how many close calls they had to having the Yondaimi's seal break when Naruto was younger. It was only by his sheer will to live that kept the beast contained for as long as he has been. The power of a Jinchuriki is all upon the mental state of the container to hold but the beast that it sealed within them. It doesn't help that Naruto is possession of the most powerful Biju to ever walk across the elemental nations. You are correct, Hokage-sama. It is because of Naruto-kun's determination that I believe that one day he will become a great shinobi. I just hope the day never comes that he ever decided to turn on the village." Yugo said. Sarutobi sighed. If such an event were to ever happen then, I don't believe that even I would be able to stop Naruto-kun if he continues to grow at the rate that he has over the years. However, as long as he has those that are precious to him then I will continue to place my faith in the boy since he is the Yondaimi's legacy. Yugo nodded her head in agreement and with a wave of his hand, she shushed away to attend to other duties. Hiruzen turned his attention to the paperwork on his desk which happened to be the team placements for the genin that had been given to him by Iruka. He realized that because of Naruto's status as the dead last that it would require him to be placed with the top rookie and top kunoichi of his class. That meant that he would have been paired with Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno and had the unfortunate affect making Kakashi his Junin sensei since he was the only one capable of training the Uchiha in the use of his Sharingan when it awakened. However, Hiruzen decided that if he was going to give Naruto a fair shot at growing as shinobi then he would have to change the setup of the teams. Now, who do I believe Naruto-kun can truly benefit having as his teammates and Junin instructor? Hiruzen thought. Sarutobi thought on the matter for a few moments before a sudden idea came to him as a grin similar to Naruto's own foxy grins appeared on his face. He had the perfect team that he hoped would provide Naruto with a stable environment to grow as a shinobi. Plus, since there were quite a few that had expressed their desire to be his Junin sensei then he had an idea to address that matter as well. All I have to do now is sit back and wait to see if they will work alongside Naruto as I hope they will since they have never harbored any negative feelings towards him. Hiruzen thought with a grin as he was quite pleased with his decision. He could only hope that this generation of shinobi could truly surpass the older generation and keep the will of fire going strong so that the future of Konoha will remain as bright as he envisioned it would be with individuals that made up Naruto's generation to push it forward to a new era. Naruto once again found himself in his mindscape or as the spirits of Hirenmaru and Senbon Sakura had identified it as his inner world. A place where the soul of a human and the spirits of his or her sword or Zanpakuto interact with each other in a spiritual sense. As he made his way across the snow-covered ground over to the small forest of sakura trees he wondered why he was able to keep warm despite what should have been sub-zero temperatures. He shrugged the thought away as he made his way into the forest of sakura trees in search of his spirit companions. As he rounded a tree he could see Senbon Sakura standing beneath a sakura tree that stood a few feet taller than the others but couldn't see Hirenmaru anywhere at the moment. Senbon Sakura smiled warmly at the blonde and Naruto felt his cheeks warm up under the gaze of the beautiful woman. "Hello again, Naruto-kun. I'm glad that I was able to be of service to you earlier in your fight against that traitor," Senbon Sakura said. Naruto smiled. "I should be thanking you since if it wasn't for you and Hirenmaru I would have been dead right now." The dark-haired spirit shook her head at his statement. "No, the likely chance of you dying was quite low since Kyuubi would have ensured your survival just as it always had over the years. After all, Kyuubi was able to protect you when neither I nor Hirenmaru could use our power to aid you. Despite its fearsome reputation Kyuubi has granted you with the ability to heal from almost any wound thanks to the Yuki that flows through your chakra pathways." "What exactly do you mean by that?" the blonde asked, tilting his head to the side. "By being the container of a Biju you are granted certain abilities that are unique to each Biju. Because of the Shikifu Jin that was used the Kyuubi had to ensure that your body was capable of handling its power or you would have died because of all the Yuki that flowed through you. The nature of the seals that made up the Shiki-Fujin ensured that the power of the Kyuubi no Yuko would slowly be converted to your own, but something was not accounted for during the sealing process. Senbon Sakura explained. What was the problem? Does it have anything to do with the fact that Kyuubi is supposed to be the strongest of the Biju? Naruto asked. That is part of the problem, but that is not all. The voice of Hiranmaru said as he descended from the sky. Naruto merely waited for the dragon to explain as he coiled his massive serpentine body around the area where he and Senbon Sakura stood. Hiranmaru brought head around the sakura tree to position himself a bit away from Senbon Sakura as he gazed at Naruto. The problem was that with the fact that you had already had both of us inhabiting your body caused an influx of power when the Kyuubi was added to the equation. When we were sealed along with the Kyuubi, your spiritual energy or Riryoku was sealed away as well. This was why you have such horrible chakra control issues, because all you had was the physical aspect of chakra at your disposal and very little spiritual. Hiranmaru explained. So, now that both of you are here, does it mean that my chakra control will be better than it was before, right? Naruto asked. His chakra control had been a major issue for a long time despite all of the chakra control exercises that he had learned. His chakra control was about mid-genin level at best, and that was only if he had to use jutsu that required a lot of chakra. Even though he possessed a lot of chakra, he knew that this caused him to waste a lot of extra whenever he performed any technique. The answer to the question would be yes as well as no. Despite the fact that you now have access to your Riryoku once again, that also mean that your chakra reserves have also expanded far more than you previously had. This also means that you will have to work even harder to gain better control over your chakra if you are to reach an optimum level of strength. We will work with you to gain control over your chakra while also showing you techniques that will require use of your Riryoku only. Hiranmaru replied. Naruto sighed. Well, I should have expected that I would have to work hard in order to get stronger, but that's nothing new to me. I've been working hard for my strength all of my life, and that won't stop me now, since if I want to reach my dreams then I have to be the strongest there is. Both spirits smiled at Naruto's determination to earn his own power and were glad that they were bound to the soul of one as unique as him. Sharing a brief glance between each other, both decided it was time that Naruto met the Kyuubi, since the great Kitsune had expressed a desire to meet its container. Naruto, I believe that it is time that you met the Kyuubi. There is much that the two of you need to discuss, and if you are to get stronger you will need its help as well. After all, that was the intention of having the Kyuubi sealed within in the first place. If the two of you can come to a compromise, it will be beneficial to all of us in the end. Senbon Sakura said. Naruto cocked his head to the side. How do I contact the Kyuubi in the first place? I was only able to come here because you told me how by remembering this place, but I've never met Kyuubi before. This is your mind, and all you need to do is think of the Kyuubi and you will be taken there. Hiranmaru said. Naruto nodded and closed his eyes as he focused on finding the Kyuubi no Yuko that resided within him. He used the knowledge that he had gained from the academy to imagine the image of a crimson nine-tailed fox that stood taller than the Hokage tower and felt a tug at the back of his mind. When the feeling had passed, Naruto waited a few moments before he opened his eyes. To say he was disappointed at what he saw would be a serious understatement. The young Uzumaki found himself in a sewer much like the ones that ran underneath Konoha that he had used to escape from mobs of villagers when he was younger. This was before he had learned how to defend himself after some of the Anbu from his security detail had begun training him. Returning to the task at hand, Naruto noticed a red glow coming from one of the many corridors that branched away from the main path and made his way towards it. Once he reached the glow, he paused for a moment as he felt a malevolent rage, but at the same time he felt an underlying emotion of sadness and surprisingly affection wash over him. He wondered about that as he walked into the glow that caused a soft tingling sensation as if someone was running a feather along his skin. As the glow faded from his vision, Naruto found himself in a huge room that led to a massive gate that with a single piece of paper with the kanji for seal. He guessed this had to be the cage that held the Kyuubi contained within him as viewed by his inner world, and made his way over to the bars. I wonder what exactly I should be expecting when I actually talk to the Kyuubi. From all the stories it should be a giant kitsune that only knows destruction, but the feelings I'm getting are confusing to say the least. Naruto thought. He was a few feet away from the cage when a pair of crimson slitted eyes snapped open right before a massive claw shot between the bars to impale him. Naruto had not been expecting such a reaction, and the claw would have struck him if not for the timely appearance of sakura petals that blocked the claw. As the claw was repelled, Naruto felt a pair of slender arms encircle his frame as well as an ample set of mounds press into his back, causing him to blush. Senbon Sakura held Naruto close as a frown marred her otherwise gentle features as she gazed into the darkness of the cage. A moment later, Hirenmaru also appeared coiled around Naruto as he hovered in a protective manner of his chosen partner. Naruto was grateful that the two were still here with him, while at the same time chastised himself for letting his guard down against the Kyuubi. So, my container finally decides to grace me with his presence. What is it that brings you here to see me, kid? Kyuubi's deep voice echoed around the room. You stupid fox. What was the big idea trying to attack me just now? Unless you forget, if something happens to me then, you're gone as well. Naruto snapped. He really didn't like how Kyuubi seemed to be talking down to him. You dare to speak to me in such a manner, ninja? Unless you have forgotten, it is only because of me that you are still alive till this day, since your so-called partners could do nothing till after your near-death experience. You should be grateful that I even put forth the effort to keep you alive in the first place. After all, I am the Kyuubi no Yuko, and you would do well to remember that. Kyuubi's angry growl caused the room to shake, slightly. Naruto was quickly becoming fed up with those that seemed to think that they were somehow superior to him. It was bad enough that the villagers treated him like he was no better than the dirt they walked on, and now Kyuubi was about to be added to the long list. I don't really care who are. You seem to forget that because of you attacking the village and being sealed in, that all my problems started in the first place. If you never came then, I could have probably had a family instead of being an orphan and grew up with a happier childhood. So, the way that I see it, since you're living in my body then, you better start paying rent by helping me get stronger. Naruto said, his anger rising. Kyuubi was shocked for a moment. It would seem that there is more to this kid than I originally thought. He has the same type of inner strength that I witnessed in my battle with the Yondaime Hokage. With me being sealed within him, it would stain my reputation if my vessel were to be seen as weak by the other demon lords. However, he is already quite strong, and with his determination he will only get stronger. Kyuubi gazed at the three figures before its cage for a moment longer before finally coming to a decision. Naruto could only watch as Kyuubi began to glow with crimson light before its form began to shrink in upon itself. He was confused by this and watched as the light began to take on a more definite human shape, but his greatest shock came as he realized that the shape was that of a woman. When the glow faded, he could only gape in wide-eyed shock at what he was seeing from behind the bars of the cage. Why yo, you're a girl! Naruto exclaimed in shock. Hirenmaru and Senbon Sakura could only chuckle since they had already known this, but it was amusing to see Naruto's reaction. Kyuubi stood around the same height as Senbon Sakura and in Naruto's opinion just as beautiful. Her crimson hair flowed down to center of her back as she stared at Naruto with crimson, slitted eyes. She was dressed in a crimson kimono with flame-like wisps designs across it and tied with an even darker red obi. Her skin was slightly tanned, and he also noticed a pair of fox ears atop her head as well as 9 crimson tails gently swaying behind her. She flashed him a grin to show a pair of prominent fangs while she folded her arms beneath her sizable bust. Why is that you humans always believe that I'm a male just because I'm considered the strongest of the Biju? I should almost feel insulted, but I guess it can't be helped since you ninja are quite ignorant of the world around you. Besides, I prefer this form much more since my kitsune form is really only meant for battle against others of my stature. Kyuubi spoke in a soft, melodious voice. Naruto was about to snap off a retort when he was interrupted by Hirenmaru's deep voice. That is quite enough, Kyuubi-sama. We came so that we can come to an agreement and to make Naruto aware of all that you've done to him. After all, I doubt that you would have gone through all this trouble in the first place. You are quite correct in your assumptions. I had long since made some adjustments to the kid's body as he has long since gained my respect for his actions up till this point in time. I made several adjustments in preparations of the day that he would regain the ability to use both of you, but I wasn't exactly sure if he was worthy until he showed me that he would work hard for his own strength. Despite the teachings of those that protected him, he always chose to do things to the hard way so that it would produce better results for him. Kyuubi replied, "Do you mind telling me exactly what you did to me? If you have so much faith in me then, I want to at least give you the benefit of the doubt." Naruto said. Kyuubi was once again shocked by Naruto's behavior as she was still getting used to him not hiding behind that idiotic mask of his. A vulpine grin appeared on her features that caused a shiver to run up Naruto's spine. You truly do interest me, Naruto Uzumaki. I will tell you of what I've done to your body to truly make you a vessel worthy of my power. Since Yuki is not meant to be handled by humans since its demonic nature is far more potent than your human chakra, I had to make sure that you could handle my power. Whenever I healed your injuries, I made sure to adjust you to make it stronger than before. Your bone structure is 3 times as dense, making them harder to break, while I've increased the elasticity of your muscles to endow you with more physical strength without the aid of chakra. You may have noticed these changes already, as well as your heightened senses, although not quite the level of a full demon. I've widened your chakra pathways to allow more of my chakra to mix with your own. By doing this, I've forced the purification seals to work over time to convert my Yuki into chakra. As it stands now, you have drained the equivalent of 2 taels of my chakra from me. Kyuubi said. Hold on a minute, if I've drained that much from you, then why do you still have 9 taels instead of 7? I thought the seal was designed to drain your power away and make it mine until you had no more and died. Naruto exclaimed. Kid, I am considered an immortal being for a reason. Despite the fact that you have my power, I will always retain my tails while in your mindscape. Once you have drained my power, I will simply be returned to Makai, where I will be reborn again. This was the pact that was made between myself and Shinigami-sama when I was sealed. If I were to simply cease to exist, then it would cause a sort of imbalance in the world. However, don't bother to question me on that, since I won't tell you anymore. I may respect you, but there are things that you will never understand about this world. Kyuubi paused for a moment to allow him digest what she said. Since you will be gaining my power, you will have to constantly work to keep a decent amount of control over your chakra. Because of the mixture of my Yuki into your pathways, your chakra shall become more potent, but not as potent as pure Yuki. You will eventually possess chakra similar to that of a Kitsune Hanyu. So, does this mean that I will one day gain tails and such that would make me look like you are more fox than human? Naruto inquired. You will gain tails, but not until you perform a certain ritual, which I won't perform until you have gained about 4 taels worth of my Yuki. I must admit you are taking all of this better than I would have expected. I sometimes forget that you are much more intelligent than you let on, since I had to bear witness to that insufferable false persona of yours for so many years now. Kyuubi said, which caused Naruto to frown. Lastly, I've given you a sort of bloodline when it comes down to your healing, so I wouldn't have to use so much of my own chakra to heal you. That is only one part of the bloodline, and I will reveal the rest to you when I deem that you are ready to now. I would tell you more, but time grows short and I've grown weary of this little conversation of ours. If you need to reach me, simply return here and I may answer your questions if I feel like. However, don't get the wrong idea that I suddenly like you. I just prefer to make our current arrangement more bearable by trying to coexist with you. You are still merely a human, and while you have gained my respect, you still have a long way to go to prove that you are worthy of being my vessel. If such a time comes, I may even allow you to call me by true name. Kyuubi finished. I thought your name was Kyuubi, but the way you say, I guess that it's more of a title to your position as the Queen of the Biju. Kyuubi nodded. Well, I hope that one day we can truly come to the point where we can get along, and I will do everything that I can to prove myself worthy of being your vessel, Kyuubi-hime. Naruto said with a grin. Kyuubi glared at him. Don't push your luck with me, Kit. If I so choose, I can use my Yuki to harm as well as heal you. Now, leave me be so that I may get so rest, and I hope you can provide me with some ample entertainment in the near future. Naruto continued to grin as he was aware that he managed to get past the seemingly regal persona of Kyuubi, which he wasn't surprised since she was the queen of the Biju after all. He didn't have much more time to think about, as with a simple wave of her hand he was removed from his mindscape. After being quiet for so long, both spirits focused their full attention onto Kyuubi. I am quite suspicious of your willingness to assist, Naruto-kun. I hope you don't have any ideas of trying to free yourself from the seal by using him. Senbon Sakura said with a frown. If that becomes the case, then we will use our own power to subdue if need be. Hiranmaru added. I am willing to assist the kid since I have had first-hand view of his life since the time of my sealing. The way that has been treated is something that we demons would never do to one of our own. Humans call all demons evil, but they possess a taint that would rival even the foulest of demons. I have lived amongst the humans for quite some time to have seen the evil acts that humans can perform. It may also be because that in a way I've come to see Naruto as my own kid. If that is the reason, then it would only be natural for a mother to make sure that her young can truly survive on his own when I'm no longer around. I may be a demon lord, but I am not as malevolent as the humans have come to make me out to be. Kyuubi replied. Will you ever tell Naruto the true reason as to why you attacked Konoha? Hiranmaru asked. Maybe when I feel that he can handle the truth, and only then shall I tell my kid what truly happened that day, was Kyuubi's only reply. With no more to say, the three spirits once more returned to their own little corner of Naruto's mindscape until he needed them. The buzzing of his alarm clock drew Naruto to the world of consciousness as his hand lashed out to silence the infernal noise. Mentally reminding himself to purchase a new clock, the blonde slowly opened his eyes as the haze of sleep was blinked away before rising from his bed. He made his way to the bathroom to go through his normal morning ritual. He was halfway through brushing his teeth when he noted a few peculiarities about his appearance. The most notable was that he seemed to be taller by several inches as well as more muscular, judging from the tightness of his shirt. His blonde hair seemed to a bit darker as well as long enough that bangs framed his face. He had lost a lot of the baby fat, giving him a more rugged as well as feral look, since his pupils appeared to be slitted much like Kyuubi's while his whisker marks were darker. What the hell? Naruto thought in surprise. These are some of the changes that I've made to you, kid. While you were asleep, I had surrounded you in a cocoon of my Yuki while your two partners used your Riryoku to mask its presence. This allowed me to make the necessary adjustments to your body while you were asleep. These changes were necessary to account for your increase in chakra, otherwise your body would have exploded from the sudden influx caused by the restoration of your Riryoku. Kyuubi replied. Well, I guess that I have something else to thank you for, Kyuubi-hime. Naruto responded, mentally. If you continue with this Hime business, then I will do something most unpleasant to your being. Kyuubi snapped. Naruto resisted the urge to laugh as he finished up before heading back to his room to put on some clothes. He took a brief glance at his orange jumpsuit before dismissing it as he headed over to his closet. Despite what many thought, he possessed more clothing than his trademark jumpsuit, which he had worn as a part of his mask. Luckily, he had an outfit that had been given to him by the Sandame for his 10th birthday that had been too big for him at the time. He guessed that with his recent increase in height it should properly fit him now. His new outfit consisted of a pair of dark blue Enbu-style pants with multiple pockets for carry scrolls, as well as a dark blue short-sleeve shirt with the same spiral design as the ones on his jumpsuit. A pair of ankle bands that acting as chakra weights were placed underneath his pants to replace his old ones. Underneath the shirt he wore fishnet armor that came down to about mid-forearm. Over his forearms was a pair of lightweight guards that were actually chakra weights. Black shinobi sandals replaced his original blue with white bandages that wrapped his heels and extended into his pants. His kunai holder was strapped to his right leg while his shuriken pouch was attached to the back of his waist along his left side. Smiling, he put on the Hite 8 that Iruka had given him and secured around his forehead to keep his bangs out of his eyes. Lastly, his gaze shifted over to a simple red box on his dresser which contained a special gift from a dear friend. Slowly, opening the box, he gazed that at the necklace with a simple pendant of an angel with a sorrowful expression. Kanae-chan, I'm sorry for what happened to you and hope to see you again one day. Until that day I will keep my promise and grow strong. Naruto thought. Placing the necklace around his neck, Naruto walked over to his swords and grasped them before securing them. He had acquired a strap to attach to Hiranmaru's sheath so that he could place it on his back within easy reach of his right hand, while Senbon Sakura was placed in his belt along his left side. Making sure that he had everything before the young blonde left his apartment while locking it via the security seals that had been installed by the Sandame. Bounding across the roofs of building, he made his way to his own personal training grounds. He had an entire week to train to work on his skills as much as he could, and he wasn't about to waste a single minute. It would be during this time Naruto would learn just how beneficial Kage Bunshin will become to his training. 1 week later, Naruto stood before the gates of the academy with a slight frown on his face. He contemplated what he was about to do. Today would be the day that he dropped his mask to everyone for the first time in 7 years and show them what kind of shinobi he truly was. He was dressed in the same outfit that the Sandame had given him after the aged Kage had given him several more copies of the outfit after complimenting him on how good he looked. Well, might as well get this over with and learn who my teammates and sensei is going to be. Naruto thought as he made his way inside. Upon arriving in the classroom, he noticed that only a few other students were there ahead him. Looking up towards the upper rows, he noticed the pineapple-shaped hairstyle of Shikamaru Nara and his best friend Choji Akamichi. Shikamaru had his head down on the desk in an attempt to gain some extra sleeps while Choji was munching on a bag of chips. This was normal for the two friends, so he dismissed them as he made his way up the rows to sit himself near the window at mid-level. He closed his eyes as he waited for the other graduates and entered a meditative state that both Hirenmaru and Senbon Sakura had taught him. This allowed him to focus and get more in tune with his Riryoku as well as gain a better grasp of the flow of his chakra. He had only been meditating for a few minutes when a loud voice broke his focus. "Hey Dobi, what do you think you're doing here? Today is for those that actually passed the graduation exam and you failed, remember?" The loud voice of Kiba Inuzuka drew everyone's attention to Naruto. Akamaru gave a bark of agreement. At first, Kiba didn't recognize Naruto due to his change in wardrobe, but once he caught his scent he knew that it was the dead last of their class. He, like the rest of the class once they recognized Naruto, was wondering why the blonde was here when he knew that he had failed the exam. Naruto slowly opened his eyes to stare at Kiba before lifting his hand to indicate his Hite 8 on his forehead. "Unless you forgot how to use your eyes, I have a Hite 8, so that means that I passed. I was given a makeup exam by Iruka sensei, so that's why I'm a shinobi now," Naruto said in a monotone. Shikamaru had raised his head during Kiba's shout and was gazing at the blonde with a calculating gaze. He was wondering why the blonde was dressed and acting differently than normal. The Naruto that he knew would have yelled at Kiba or tried to start a fight, but now he was calm and relaxed. It reminded the young Nara of how he had seen his father as well as many of the elder shinobi acted. "Kiba, why don't you stop being so troublesome? If you want you can ask Iruka sensei when he gets here if Naruto is telling the truth. If he's lying then, he'll have to leave, so be quiet, all of your shouting is ruining my nap time," Shikamaru drawled out. Kiba huffed as he pulled Akamaru from his perch atop his head as he found a seat while throwing glares at Naruto. The blonde gave a brief nod towards Shikamaru before going back into his meditative trance to pass the time away. Shikamaru saw this and once again wondered what brought on these changes in the normally loud and hyperactive blonde. He pushed the thought aside to figure out later as his head once again dropped down to rest atop his folded arms. One by one student continued to pile into the classroom, with some taking note of the blonde while others dismissed him. Eventually one Hinata Hyuga entered the room with a saddened expression. The reason for this was because she knew that her precious Naruto-kun would not be a part of this year's graduation exam. She had desperately wanted for him to pass so that she may gain the chance to be on the same team with her crush. His failure was a major blow to her confidence since she had always used Naruto as her pillar of strength. With his final failure he would lose the chance to become a shinobi and have to remain a civilian, which wouldn't allow her many opportunities to see him anymore. As she neared her chosen seat a flash of blonde hair drew her attention, and as she shifted her gaze she couldn't help but gasp as she saw Naruto sitting there. A bright crimson blush appeared on her face as she gazed at her crush sitting on the opposite side of the room. He was dressed differently than before. She could swear that he appeared to be a bit taller, but he seemed to be even more handsome in her opinion. She continued to gaze at him for quite some time as she took in more of his features and committed them to memory. "If Naruto-kun is here then, doesn't that mean that he passed the exam but I thought he failed? If this is a dream then, I don't want to be woken up right now," Hinata thought, still blushing. Maybe this would give her another chance to get closer to the one that she admires most, but she wondered if she could ever work up the courage to speak to him. A few whispers reached her ears and she realized that many of the girls in the classroom were making comparisons to Naruto and Sasuke. This immediately angered the Hyuga heiress as they only now began to notice Naruto for the handsome person that he was and had the nerve to compare her Naruto-kun to Sasuke. They better not get any ideas of trying to go after my Naruto-kun, Hinata thought, angrily. Her blush increased to a new level as she realized that she had thought of Naruto as hers and with great effort resisted the urge to faint. Quickly taking a seat, she tried to focus her thoughts away from the handsome blonde, but it was all futile as her thoughts quickly became perverted. If anyone had been looking at the pale-eyed girl, they would have noticed her wiping away a minor nosebleed. She was saved any other form of embarrassment as she heard a low rumble coming down the halls and knew of only two people that could be the cause. Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno, co-founders of the Sasuke Uchiha fan club and best friends turned rivals for said boy's attention. A moment later, both girls were both trying to force their way into the classroom at the same time. "Ha, I made it first, Ino pig, so I get to sit by Sasuke-kun," Sakura proclaimed. "Get real, billboard brow. My toe beat you by a whole centimeter, so I'm the one that's going to sit next to Sasuke-kun." Ino snapped back. "What did you say, Ino pig?" Sakura hollered. "You heard me, billboard brow." Ino replied. "Ino pig, billboard brow. Ino pig, billboard brow." The class groaned as the two girls continued to argue as they made their way over to where the Uchiha was sitting. Still in his meditative trance, was unaware that Sasuke had taken the seat to his left that placed him directly by the window. The raven-haired youth had used Naruto's position to block off any attempts by his fangirls to sit next to him. The problem was that he knew that when it came down to Sakura, the blonde would instantly do whatever she said. He had noted Naruto's change in appearance and already knew why he was here after overhearing some of the other students talking about him. Despite the changes the blonde seemed to have made in his wardrobe, Sasuke still disregarded him as mere annoyance in his presence. At one point in time he had wanted to consider Naruto a rival, but after having witnessing his pathetic skills he decided against that. If he were to consider Naruto a rival, then he would only get weaker by competing against such an unworthy opponent and never get strong enough to defeat Itachi in order to avenge his clan and regain their honor. Noticed the arrival of his most annoying fangirls, Sasuke schooled his features into his trademark mask of indifference as he stared straight ahead at the blackboard. Ino and Sakura made their way up the steps and stopped at the row that Sasuke was sitting at. Upon noticing that Naruto was sitting between them and her goal, Sakura grew angry at the blonde as she completely disregarded Naruto's change in attire as an attempt to be cool like her Sasuke-kun. Ino, on the other hand, took note of Naruto's appearance, and a memory came to her of a younger Naruto before he began wearing that hideous orange jumpsuit and became a loud-mouthed idiot. The Naruto from then was one that didn't back down from anyone and had befriended both her and Sakura before the two had begun their rivalry over Sasuke. It was this Naruto that she had gained a crush on because of his bad boy behavior, but it ended when he changed. This was also the reason why she tried for Sasuke, since he reminded of that Naruto only with a lot of angst. "Naruto, move out of the way so that I can sit next to Sasuke-kun," Sakura demanded. When Naruto made no reaction that he had heard her caused everyone to be shocked by his actions. They were all aware of the major crush that he had on the pink-haired Haruno and would do anything that she said as if he were her little puppy. If they only knew how much that had been a part of his mask that he had chosen to get rid of, they wouldn't have been surprised by his next actions. Since Naruto made no move to get out of her way, Sakura decided to handle Naruto in the same way that she always did when he tended to annoy, by using violence. Rearing back her fist. "I said move out of my way, Naruto baka." She as well as everyone else was surprised when Naruto's right hand shot up and caught her fist, but even more surprising was the fact that his hand didn't move upon impact or that his eyes had remained closed the entire time. Not seeming to notice the reactions of his fellow classmates of his sudden action against the pink-haired Kunoichi, Naruto addressed Sakura. "What makes you assume that I should move just because you tell me to, Haruno-san? I was here before Sasuke and it was his decision to sit by me, not mine." His eyes slowly opened to regard the girl. "I can see that there are plenty more seats for you to take, so I suggest that you leave me alone. I'm not going to move from this seat, and if you try to hit me again I will make you regret it for your foolishness," Naruto said in his monotone. Sakura was totally shocked that her puppy wasn't listening to her and had actually threatened her while nor calling her Sakura-chan like he always did. This was not the way things were supposed to be between her and Naruto Uzumaki. He was supposed to always listen to whatever she said and be there whenever she needed to vent her frustrations or make her feel better about herself with his declarations of love for her. Since so many of her classmates tended to pick on her because of her larger-than-average forehead, it was the attention that Naruto gave her that gave her the confidence to face each day. Her shock slowly faded away to become anger that Naruto would dare do this to her, and once again raised her hand to hit the blonde. It was at that moment that many came to the realization that this was not the Naruto that they had attended school with them for the last 6 years. In the blink of the eye, Naruto had stood and with amazing speed and moved behind Sakura to catch her fist while it was still reared back. Everyone was once again shocked since none of them had even seen the blonde move, as with a mere blink of an eye he was behind Sakura. Sakura whirled around to hit him with her free hand, but this hand was also caught mere inches away from his face. "Let go of me right now, Naruto Baka, before I make you regret it," Sakura said, angrily. Naruto didn't release her as he moved his hands to bring Sakura's hands closer to her body until he held them in a cross position against her chest as he uncrossed his. He peered down at the girl that was now shorter than him after his growth spurt, which a lot of the others noticed and wondered how he had grown so much in just a week's time. Leaning forward until his face was a mere few inches from hers as she began to blush as she got a close-up look of his new features and was nervous as she noticed his now slitted pupils. "I regret very few things in my life and you are no threat to me, Haruno-san. I've warned you already and I'm giving you another chance to move along before I end up doing something to you that I will most definitely enjoy in order to show you your place. You may think that I have some sort of crush on you, but I can assure you that was never the case. After all, you were the one that cast me aside when we were younger to chase after the emo king, so why would I still care about someone as pathetic as you?" Naruto said. Sakura felt tears begin to build at the corners of her eyes at Naruto's words. She knew that she had threw Naruto's friendship away when they were younger, but because of the way he continued to act she thought he had gotten over it. She turned her gaze away from him since she didn't want him to see how much his words had hurt her. Naruto didn't seem to care as he released her arms and pivoted on his heels as he moved to the opposite side of the room to get away from the pink-haired banshee. Noting the empty seat next to Hinata, he made his way over to her before sitting down and closing his eyes. He saw the blush on her face and knew that she had a crush on him. He would have gladly made a pass at her, but because of what happened to Kanae he didn't dare do so. Even though she was the heiress of the Hyuga clan, he knew that it would have caused problems because of the burden that he carried by being involved with her. She was easily one of the most beautiful girls in his class along with Ino and even Sakura, but because of her status it put her out of his reach. That was why he had chosen Sakura to have a crush on when he had donned his mask, since she was from a civilian family and no one would make such a big deal if he pursued her. Plus, since he allowed her to hit him so much, it made the civilians more smug in the fact that he could be denied something else that would make him appear human in their eyes. Ino had watched Naruto the entire time and felt the same feeling from before blossom within her chest. If this was her Naruto making his return, then she would let Sakura or any of the other girls have Sasuke. This was the boy that she had first fallen for, and she knew that if she was going to get to him before someone else did, then she would have to make up for all the years she had been cruel to him and gain his friendship back as well as maybe more. She barely noticed as Sakura sat down the now vacant seat next to Sasuke with a dejected look on her face as she made her way closer to Naruto and took the vacant seat that was next to him. "What was that all about, Naruto? I never would have thought that you would pull a Sasuke on Sakura, like even if she did deserve it," Ino said. "Are you trying to get me to apologize to her, Yamanaka-san?" Naruto asked without opening his eyes. "If you chose to act the same way she did, then you will receive the same treatment as her from me. I have no pity for her since, like you said, she deserved it for all the times she treated me cruelly in the past." Ino shook her head. "Why would you think I'm trying to get you to apologize to her?" "Because in the past whenever someone insulted Sakura you would stand up for her to get the other person to leave her alone, even if she would turn on you afterwards, and the two of you would then have an argument. So, you can see why I'm expecting you to act that the same as you have in the past, since you are just like her and trying to put me down in front of your precious Sasuke-kun." Naruto replied. "What if I said that I've always been more interested in you than Sasuke?" Ino asked with a smile. Naruto didn't reply as at that moment Iruka entered the classroom. The brown-haired Chunin was surprised that the class wasn't as rowdy as it normally was, but he was glad for the change of pace. He scanned the face of the genin hopefuls and was pleased to see Naruto, but was surprised that he was sitting between Hinata and Ino instead of next to Sakura. He took a look at the pink-haired girl and saw the dejected look on her face as well as the glances that she shot towards Naruto and wondered what had happened before he arrived. He mentally shrugged as he addressed the classroom of students on what they should expect now that they had graduated from the academy. Naruto tuned him out since he had been long since made aware of what to expect due to his teachings from the Sandame and his Anbu instructors. He only wanted to know who his teammates and sensei were so he could move on to the next step of his shinobi career. Skipping teams 1 through 6 since they are not important to the storyline. Team 7 will be Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Kiba Inuzuka. Your Junin sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki. Sasuke and Kiba groaned at being paired up with Sakura while the girl made no reaction to being on the same team as her crush. Team 8 will be Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga, and Naruto Uzumaki. Your Junin senseis will be Anko Mitarashi and Kurenai Yuhi. Iruka said before he was interrupted. Hey, how come the dead last gets 2 senseis but not Sasuke-kun? A random fangirl asked. This was a decision made by Hokage-sama. Iruka replied, I hate that they allowed so many fangirls to enter the academy just for the chance to be next the last Uchiha. I bet he was given an extra sensei so they could train him to be a better shinobi. Doesn't matter how training he gets since he won't be as good as Sasuke-kun. Another random fangirl remarked. Sasuke puffed out his chest upon hearing this while many of the boys groaned as they heard another, Sasuke is the greatest, rant. Iruka expected Naruto to snap after hearing this but was surprised when he was met with silence. Glancing at his favorite student, he was surprised to see Naruto had his eyes closed as if meditating. He was even more surprised to see Hinata and even Ino as well as a few other girls glaring at the 2 girls that berated Naruto. I guess Naruto's change in looks have given him a small fan club. I'm not surprised to see Hinata glaring but Ino and the rest are a surprise. I wonder how this will all turn out if they all start going after Naruto like they do Sasuke. Iruka thought with a chuckle. As I was saying, there will be no Team 9 since they are still in circulation from last year and finally, Team 10 will be Choji Akamichi, Shikamaru Nara, and Ino Yamanaki. Your Junin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Iruka said, I wish all of you good luck and I am proud to have been able to teach each one of you. Take a 1-hour lunch and return here to meet your new senseis. Students began to file out as many made their way to the roof to converse with their new teammates. Naruto got up and shifted his gaze over to Hinata who was blushing while poking her index fingers together before looking over towards Shino. The silent boy was facing away from them and was waiting for everyone else to leave before he made his own exit. Come on, Hinata-chan. I want to invite you and Shino to join me for lunch at Ichiraku Ramen. Naruto said as he flashed her a foxy grin. Hinata could only nod since she was still blushing over the fact that she was going to be on the same team as her crush. With all the chances that they would have to work together, she could only hope that she would be able to work up the courage to confess her feelings to him. However, all thoughts of her future with Naruto came to a screeching halt when he suddenly grabbed her hand. With that simple contact, all of the blood rushed to her head and she began to sway on her feet. Luckily, Naruto knew of her fainting spells and now without his mask he could act normally around her. Before Hinata could fall, he had managed to scoop her up into his arms and held her bridal style. Unfortunately, that was the final stimuli needed to push Hinata into the blissful realm of unconsciousness. Naruto could only chuckle at the grin that Hyuga Eris was now sporting and could only imagine what the girl was thinking about at the moment. He could hear the melodious giggle of both Kyuubi and Senbon Sakura echoing in his head and could only help but think of how cute all of her shyness made her. He was glad for all the lessons about relationships he received from the female Anbu that had taken time to help with his training over the years. Lifting his gaze away from the girl in his arms, he found Shino staring at him with his hands jammed into the pockets of his oversized coat. Making his way over to where his teammate was standing with a grin plastered on his face. Since we're teammates, how about you join me and Hinata for some ramen at Ichiraku so we can get to know each other better? Naruto said. Shino nodded. I agree with your logic and would like to get to know both of you better so that we may establish a bond of trust. Since we will most likely having to place our lives in the hands of each other in the near future, it would be best. I am also very curious in your change in behavior and my Kikai say that your chakra is different as well. I'll tell you about it over lunch, so let's hurry so that we can get back in time. Naruto replied as he began to walk away, still carrying Hinata. The Aburame followed his new teammates and it only took them a few minutes to roof-hop to Ichiraku. Hinata was finally awakening when they arrived and blushed once again when she realized that Naruto was carrying her. She could easily feel the toned muscles of his arms and chest as they held her lithe body against him. I can't believe that Naruto-kun is holding me like this. Come on, don't faint again, Hinata. If you keep fainting then, Naruto-kun will think that you're some kind of pervert. Hinata thought as she managed to calm herself with several deep breaths. Glad to see that you're awake, Hinata-chan. Naruto said with a smile. Thank you, na Naruto-kun. I am fine and now. Hinata replied still blushing. Well, I'm glad that you're alright and hope you still want to join me and Shino for lunch, Naruto said. Hinata's blush deepened by several shades as she took several deep breaths in order to remain conscious. Naruto-kun called me Haim. If I was brave enough I would hug him and kiss him right now, but I would probably die of embarrassment if I were to do that now. Hey Naruto, who's your little girlfriend? The loud boisterous voice of Tucci called from the ramen stand. Naruto placed Hinata onto her feet much to the displeasure of the lavender-eyed girl as he turned to meet one of his precious people. Hinata and Shino joined him as he took his regular stool with Shino on his left and Hinata on his right. How's it going, Gigi, and where's Ayame-chan? Naruto inquired. Everything's just fine now that my number one customer is here and Ayame should be in the back at the moment. Tucci was about to call out to her when a blur came from around the corner of the stand. Naruto barely had a chance to prepare himself before he was engulfed in a hug by Ayame, much to the growing displeasure of Hinata. Shino's hive was buzzing as the telltale sign of anger could be felt rolling of the Hyuga heiress and shifted a bit uncomfortably. If she suddenly decided to attack the ramen waitress then, he was going to make sure that he was well out of her way. Naruto-kun, where have you been for the past week? I was worried that something might have happened to you. Ayame asked as she released him. Sorry about that, Nei-chan. After I passed my genin exams I decided to use the week off to get in some extra training before team assignments. I went to my private training ground and didn't usually come home until late. Naruto replied. Well, since you're here, what can I get for you and your friends? Ayame asked as she made her way back into the stand. I'll have 5 beef ramen, 5 miso ramen, and 2 teriyaki ramen. Naruto replied. I'll have 1 bowl of miso ramen. Shino replied. Anyo, I'll have a bowl of chicken ramen, please. Hinata added. Tucci nodded as he began preparing their orders. Ayame leaned over the counter as she gazed at the 3 before and gave a smirk when she noticed the blushing Hinata throwing glances at her surrogate little brother. So, are you going to introduce me to your friends, Naruto-kun? Ayame inquired. These are my new teammates, Shino Aburame and Hinata Hyuga, and these are 2 of my precious people, Ayame Nei-chan and Gigi Tucci. Naruto replied as the 4 greeted each other. I'm glad that you finally managed to graduate, Naruto-kun. If I had known I would have gotten together with Tucson and gotten you a graduation gift. When you didn't show up all last week I thought something had happened and you were never home when I checked by your apartment. Ayame said. I'm sorry to have worried you, but I really needed the training since it seemed that I somehow managed to gain a bloodline ability. When I talked to Sarutobi Gigi he suggested that I take some time to train with a sensei he had set up for me. Naruto lied. So, this new Kekai Genkai is the reason for your increase in height as well as your increased chakra levels? Shino inquired. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I've had it for a while but never had anyone that I could train with so that I could learn what it didn't, but it basically deals with the body, but I'm not sure if that's all. I've noticed that my stamina has increased as well and I was already a stamina freak to begin with. Sugoi, Naruto-kun is even more amazing than ever. Now that he has his own Kekai Genkai he will be even stronger than before. I just hope that I don't become a burden on him or Shino in the future. I would hate for Naruto-kun to treat me the same way he treated Sakura-san. Hinata thought. Naruto-kun, I have noticed that why you are acting differently than before. Is that because of your Kekai Genkai as well? Hinata asked, struggling to control her stuttering habit. No, that's not the reason why I'm acting this way. The way that I used to act during the academy was merely a mask that I created. For a long time I was treated rather badly and I don't know why. I wondered if it was because I was an orphan from the Kyuubi attack or it was because of my parents. I learned that if I acted like an idiot then, People tended to ignore me, so that was why I acted the way I did all of the time. When I became a genin, I had a talk with Sarutobi Gigi and he told me to drop my mask, since if I was going to have teammates then they should get to know the real me. Naruto replied. Ayame and Teuchi didn't say anything since this was the first time they had heard this story, but they knew why Naruto chose to act this way. It wasn't his fault that the Yondaime chose Naruto to seal the Kyuubi into him, but instead of treating him like the hero that he was, they treated him like the worst criminal. Luckily, they were able to see that Naruto was just a lonely boy that yearned for some form of attention. That was why they treated Naruto the way that he should be treated and did whatever they could to make his suffering more tolerable. Hinata was aware of the way that the civilians and many of the shinobi treated Naruto from the many times she had followed to watch her crush train. She didn't see why they would treat someone as nice and caring as Naruto with hateful glare and spiteful words. Shino was also aware of the way the civilians and some shinobi treated Naruto because his entire clan treated with prejudice because they shared their bodies with their Kikai bugs. However, the looks that Naruto received were far worse than any that had ever been directed at him or his clansmen. Both made the decision that they would discover why Naruto was treated the way he was and would remain by his side as his friends for as long as he would allow them. Well, I'm glad to hear that everything is alright with you. I don't know what I would do if I suddenly lost my #1 customer. I would probably be out of business if you don't show up every so often. Teuchi said as he placed their orders before them. The three thanked them and began to dig into their meals. Hinata and Shino could only gape in awe at how rapidly Naruto dug into his food, while Ayame could only giggle while Teuchi laughed at their expressions. As Naruto sat there surrounded by the four, he realized that his life was no longer as miserable as it once was. Ever since the night he gained Hirenmaru and Senbon Sakura, it was as if a path was set before that would lead him to happiness. He now had two more that he hoped that he could count as his precious people, and he would do everything in his power to protect them all. As the three left the ramen stand, he once again realized that it was a good thing that he had let down his mask. Maybe when he got to meet his new Junin senseis, his future in Konoha would continue to look all the more brighter. He could only hope that they didn't share the same views as the rest of the villagers, but if they did he would have Hinata and Shino to support him, and that was all he needed at the moment. The three genin hopefuls entered the classroom to notice that many of the other students had returned. Naruto noted that Sakura was amongst them and she was glaring in his direction while releasing a pathetic excuse for killer intent. He repressed the urge to leak out some of his own killer intent towards the girl to remind her of his earlier threat. He was grateful that the Sandame hadn't put him on the same team as her. He knew he would have to listen to her day after day harping about how he was trying to upstage the king of brooding when he began to show his true skills. I guess my little display earlier didn't really affect her that much. As long as she doesn't try anything anymore, I won't worry about her. Naruto thought. He followed Hinata and Shino while noting that many of the members of Sasuke's fan club was looking at him while blushing and felt a shiver run up his spine. Kami helped him if they started chasing him the way that chased Sasuke, but he was disappointed with how shallow some of these so-called kunoichi were. He wondered when they would realize that with how unstable Sasuke was, maybe they would focus more on their own shinobi skills. Naruto-kun, you make it sound as if it is such a terrible thing that they have begun to find you desirable. If they had taken interest in you earlier, you could have motivated them to improve by saying that you required a strong companion. That way they would have trained in order to show you they were strong in order to gain your attention, much like your teammate Hinata does. Senbon Sakura said with a giggle. That may be true, but I don't think I could handle being chased around the village on a daily basis. Plus, a lot of parents would have been angry with me and claimed that the demon child had enchanted their daughters. Was Naruto's mental reply. That is true, but Hinata would be perfect for you if she were to overcome her shy nature. I can tell from your memories that she seeks your approval, but I also know why you don't pursue her is also a factor. Senbon Sakura said. I need to be patient until the time that I can show the village that I am not the demon that they make me out to be. If I can ever gain their acceptance, then my life will be a lot easier. I don't want anything like what happened to Kanae to ever happen again if I can do anything to prevent it. Naruto replied. Senbon Sakura chose to remain silent as she was aware how much of a painful subject Kanae was for Naruto. However, Kyuubi decided at that moment to enter into the conversation after being silent for so long. I don't understand why you chose to grieve over the fate of the female kid so much since you were so powerless at the time. You should just exact your rightful revenge on these pathetic ninja and the civilians that were responsible. With the power you have at your disposal, it would be such an easy task. Kyuubi said. I chose not to since it would not be what Kanae would want me to do. I would prefer not to pull an Itachi and wipe out the entire village. I want to show them that I am more than you in a human form. Besides, I have others that are precious to me, and as long as I have them, then I won't do anything to this village. Besides, how can I reach my dream to become Hokage and surpass Yondaime if I start attacking villagers like that? I want to gain some form of acceptance, even if it is just a little bit. Naruto replied, I still believe that you are wasting your time trying to prove yourself to these pathetic fleshbags. Soon you won't even be one of them, and do you think that they will accept you once you ascend to a Kitsune Hanyu? They will scorn you even more and will truly come to see you as my reincarnation. That is why Biju like myself and the others have such little respect for humans. To your small minds you believe that you are the ultimate existence of kami and that anything else is demonic in nature. Many don't even realize that creatures such as your summons are demons known as dire beasts, yet they are praised with reverence even though they are demons of lower level that we Biju. Kyuubi said in irritation. I was told once before that a person can understand things to a great level of enlightenment when told something, but people are ignorant of the truth that is right before him. Many may scorn demons, but I am sure that are some that praise your very existence, whether it is for good or evil. I'm not entirely sure that you aren't entirely evil, since I don't know the reason why you attacked the village. I don't know if all that you have done to help me is perhaps some sort of way to manipulate me to help you later to finish what you started. According to legends, Kitsune are known to be tricksters, and I have other manipulate me before when I was younger. That is why I'm not so easily trusting of people. Naruto retorted, you are wise not to be so trusting of me since you don't know my true reasons for helping you. However, if I were to try to manipulate you, then your Zanpakuto spirits would do everything in their power to stop me. However, if your will is weak, then they would have very little power. Until you prove to me that I won't be disgraced by having you as my vessel, then it wouldn't be wise to fully trust me. I will only tell you my reasons once you prove yourself worthy, and you have a long way to go, kid. Kyuubi said with a smirk. I don't know how I can really prove myself to you, but I will continue to follow my own nindo and protect those that are precious to me. I have been hiding behind my mask for so long, and I'm ready to show the world that Naruto Uzumaki isn't the loudmouth idiot that always claimed he would become Hokage. I'm going to become the strongest and prove to everyone that I'm a serious shinobi of Konoha. I owe that much to Kanae and everyone else that is precious to me. Naruto said, well said, my young friend. You possess the will to endure everything that has been thrown at you and retain your true self. You chose to remain in the light and become a protector, and instead of allowing the darkness to swallow you and become the village's self-fulfilling prophecy. This is why myself and Senbon Sakura are eternally grateful that we are your partners. Hirenmaru spoke for the first time. I agree with Hirenmaru when he expresses why we were chosen as your partners, as we represent your desire to protect others. Our power will always be at your disposal as long as you stay to the path that you have chosen. You are a protector, and that desire will make you as powerful as you strive to become. A person can truly become stronger than their perceived limits when they have those precious that they wish to protect. Senbon Sakura added, enough of this sentimentality from the three of you. I'd rather be roaming your memories than listening to this. Kyuubi said with a growl. Well, tough for you since I follow my own path and you're just going to have to enjoy the ride because this is who I am. Naruto said as he cut the mental link. He was unaware of the satisfied chuckles of Hirenmaru and Senbon Sakura and the aggravated roar of feminine fury from Kyuubi. He began to idly strum his fingers on his desk as he waited for the lunch break to end before they could meet their Junin sensei. He was suddenly aware of two chakra signatures on the edge of his awareness, but they both felt suppressed. He began to look around the classroom in search of the signatures and noticed a shimmering in the far corner at the back of the classroom. He realized that it was a genjutsu, and even though he wasn't proficient at it because of his huge chakra reserves, he was still able to detect and dispel them. However, he didn't dispel this one since he wondered who would go through the trouble of using a genjutsu to hide themselves and observe the classroom for whatever the reason. Maybe it's one of those that hate me and was hoping for the opportunity to catch me off guard, but why in a place like this? Perhaps they were thinking that if they attacked me in front of everyone that I wouldn't try to fight back and make me an easy kill. Do they really think that endangering the lives of the heirs of so many prominent clans just to get at me would be such a great idea? Such foolishness is why I wonder why I want to protect this village at times and become its leader. If I was really an evil demon then, I would kill them and everyone else in this room with little remorse. Naruto thought. Naruto was drawn from his thoughts by someone sitting next to him and turned his gaze to see Ino sitting next to him, smiling. Choji and Shikamaru were sitting in the row below them and the pineapple-haired genius was quick to note the frown that Hinata was now directing at the platinum blonde. Naruto cocked his head to the side for a moment as he gazed at the girl. An act that many of the girls thought was kawaii. "Can I help you with anything, Yamanaki-san?" Naruto asked. He still wasn't too sure what to make of one of Sasuke's biggest fangirls. "Don't need to be so formal with me, Naruto-kun. I just wanted to have a talk with you since it's been such a long time since I've seen this side of you." Ino replied, still smiling. "What do you mean by that?" Naruto asked with his head still tilted. Ino leaned closer much to Hinata's growing displeasure. "You know exactly what I mean. This reminds me of the way that you used to act when we first became friends when we were younger. You used to be so cool back then, and I really liked that about you. I don't know why you started acting like a hyperactive, loudmouth baka in the first place, but I didn't like that at all." Ino whispered with a slight frown. Naruto cocked his head back straight as he stared into her eyes for a moment. He was surprised what he found in her pale blue orbs. There was concern, and unless he was imagining it, affection, and it was all directed at him. He didn't know what to make of this since the only ones to ever look at him in such a way were Hinata and Kanae. "What are you trying to pull, Yamanaki-san? Is this some sort of plot by you and Sakura to get back at me for what I said earlier? Because if it is, it won't work. I'm not as naive as I made myself out to be all these years, and I have my reasons for why I chose to act the way I have in the past," Naruto said. Ino jerked her head back to glare at her fellow blonde. "Why would I do something like that? Forehead girl deserved exactly what she got, and I'm not trying to defend her or anything like that. I'm not as shallow as I seem, and I thought you would have at least remembered that since we used to be friends. I also seem to recall that you ended our friendship after I started acting differently in order to chase after Sasuke. If you were truly my friend then, something like that wouldn't have affected our friendship in the first place," Naruto retorted as he turned his gaze away from her. Shikamaru and the others were now being drawn into the conversation and wondered how Ino would respond. They were all aware of the past history between the two blondes since Ino had went from being one of Naruto's friends to another of the many that would tease him when he acted like an idiot. "I know that I didn't really act like a friend in the past, and I'm sorry about that. I was young, so I was prone to make mistakes, and my biggest mistake was ending our friendship just because I wanted Sasuke to notice me. I made the same mistake with Sakura and I'm still regretting that as well, but I want to at least start making amends with you," Ino replied. "Why would you suddenly have a change of heart after all of this time? Don't tell me that know that I look cool you want me to be the next object of your attention? I'm only interested in people that see me for who I truly am, to consider my precious people. I'm tired of hiding behind the mask that I created 6 years ago to appease others," Naruto said with an edge to his monotone voice. "What do you mean by that, Naruto?" Choji asked. Naruto shifted his gaze to the Akamichi. "I really don't want to talk about that right now, Choji. It's something that I decided to do when I was younger to gain attention, but at the same time it was a stupid idea. I don't understand why you would do something so troublesome. If you acted like what I've seen so far all the time, then you would have been getting a lot of attention just like Sasuke," Shikamaru said. Naruto sighed. "It's not as simple as you make it seem, Shikamaru. There are things about me that many don't know, and because of them I'm not seen in a positive light by others." "What kind of things are you talking about, Naruto-kun?" Ino asked. Naruto was still unaccustomed to the affectionate way she said his name. "I can't talk about things like that since it's a secret of mine, and as a fellow shinobi you know we all have our own secrets." "What kind of secret, Adobe, like you have? While you're at it, tell me about those swords that you have?" Sasuke's arrogant voice sounded. Everyone turned their gaze to the Uchiha heir as he stood at the end of the row looking at Naruto with an aloof gaze. The guys in Hinata were constantly sickened by how he seemed to look down on everyone else as if he was superior to everyone. Even Ino began to wonder why she even tried to go after him in the first place. Naruto returned his gaze with a bored one of his own as he tilted his head to the left. Why would you want to know anything about me or my swords, Uchiha? You have constantly made it known that I am unworthy of your attention, so why the sudden interest? Naruto's eyes widened, slightly. Don't tell me that you're interested in that way, Sasuke? If so, that would explain why you always turn down all the beautiful girls in the village. I'm going to let you know right now that I don't swing that way, so go find someone else. Naruto said, still in a monotone. Sasuke sputtered for a moment as he glared at Naruto. Many snickers were heard from the guys and a few girls gave Sasuke questionable glances while others glared at Naruto for insinuating their precious Sasuke-kun was gay. I am not gay. I was talking about those two swords on your back and waist. Sasuke snapped. I'm merely calling things as I see them. I know for a fact that any other guy would love to have so many girls chasing after them wanting to be their girlfriends. You even have a lot of the older kunoichi chasing after you and you always turn them down saying you're not interested. What else would you expect me to say after seeing you do that? Naruto replied. Sasuke glared for a moment longer before a smirk crossed his face. You're just saying that since none of them would even bother to look at you. You think that just because you changed your look that they will start liking you all of a sudden. Forget it, because no one would ever want a doby like you. Why would any girl in their right mind want a no-talent clanless loser like you? I don't know how you managed to sweet-talk the Hokage into passing you, but I'm glad you're not on my team since you would be nothing but dead weight. I wouldn't mind being Naruto's girlfriend, was the collective thought of Hinata, Ino and many other girls, but Naruto was unaware of this. Naruto returned his smirk with a deadpan look. You have no idea how glad I'm not on your team. I don't think I would be able to concentrate on anything else since I'll always have to keep looking over my shoulder to make sure you're not trying anything. I would never be able to live with the shame if you actually managed to succeed, and I would be scared for life. Sasuke glared at Naruto with such intensity that he would have exploded from spontaneous combustion if the Uchiha was capable of it. The class had erupted into laughter at hearing this and realized that this new Naruto was a lot better than the one they had known. Sakura had grown tired of listening to her puppy talk about her Sasuke-kun in such a way and was going to remind him of his place compared to the Uchiha. Sadly, she seemed to suffer from a case of short-term amnesia since she seemed to forget how she had broken down in front of Naruto earlier. Stomping over to where the others stood, she placed her hands on her hips as she glared at Naruto. Naruto baka, take back what you said about Sasuke-kun. Sakura screeched. Naruto seemed to wince as he shifted his gaze to her. Will you tone it down, you pink-haired banshee? I don't think they heard you all the way in Iwa, and if they did they're probably half deaf right about now. Stop trying to act all cool like Sasuke-kun. Nobody is going to like you any more than before, and I know no girl would want a loser like you. Plus, if you think I'm going to start liking you, then you can forget it, because you will never be as great as Sasuke-kun, so save yourself the embarrassment. Sakura snapped at a much more moderate level. Naruto clasped his hands in a prayer as if thanking Kami as he looked towards the roof. You have no idea how happy you made me when you said that. I would probably be just as creeped out as if Sasuke was chasing me if I had a flat-chested pink-haired man trying to come onto me. Sakura seethed with rage as laughter echoed around the classroom. How dare Naruto baka talk to me like that? Cha, put our puppy in his place for being a bad boy. Inner Sakura exclaimed. Before Sakura could rain down righteous female fury on Naruto, Sasuke decided to speak up again. Dobi, I do know where you got the new attitude, but if know what's best for you, then you'll knock it off. I wouldn't mind reminding you why I'm the rookie of the year, or have you forgotten how easily I used to wipe the floor with you in our spars? Sasuke smirked with an air of arrogance. Although Naruto had no intention of following up Sasuke on his challenge, both girls beside him grabbed an arm to prevent him from moving. Ino grabbed his chin and pulled his gaze to her while Hinata was blushing crimson from touching Naruto while wishing she was bold enough to do what the blonde was doing. Naruto-kun, don't fight with Sasuke, okay? Ino pleaded. Many were surprised with the change in honorifics on the names of the two boys while wondering about Ino's sudden change of interests in boys. Hinata quickly began to realize that Ino was indeed interested in her Naruto-kun and had to gather up her courage to show her interest in him as well. Na Naruto-kun. Why you shouldn't fight W with Sasuke-kun's sin since it's su ld and really bad for the two of you. IDD don't want you to get into any trouble, so please don't. Hinata said while proud she managed to control her stuttering some. Sasuke, stop being so troublesome. Shikamaru drawled. Just because Naruto embarrassed you doesn't mean you have to fight him. Yeah, I agree with the lazy bum since you already proved you're his alpha, but neither of you can hold a candle to a specimen like me. I would wipe the floor with both of you without even using Akamaru. Kiba boasted. Sasuke quickly turned his glare to the Inuzuka and sneered at his teammate. You're just as bad as the Dobi even if you are from a clan, but still just another loser. I don't even know why I'm bothering with any of you since none of you are even worth my time. Sasuke cast a final glare at Naruto before turning away with Sakura following while glaring at Naruto as well before trying to gain Sasuke's attention. She was ignored as usual as Sasuke went into his normal brooding mode. Kiba was undecided on whether to join his teammates or not at first, but a look at Naruto, who had removed Ino's hand from his face, told him he was better off with the emo cane. Man, you really are troublesome, Naruto. Shikamaru said while scratching his head. I have no clue what you are implying, Shikamaru. I wasn't the one that started it, so how come I get to be the troublesome one? Naruto retorted. Shikamaru sighed. You're such a troublesome blonde. I still wonder where he got those swords from, but I'll ask him later. Naruto smirked at the boy before turning his attention to the two girls. I wasn't about to do anything to him, but I do appreciate the effort. However, I don't think the two of you need to try and hold me down anymore. It's not like I'm planning on going after Sasuke or anything, since it wouldn't be good for my sanity if you know what I mean. Both girls blushed as they realized they both still had a grip on Naruto's arms. Ino only blushed a light pink while averting her gaze, but Hinata was blushing a whole new shade of crimson and looked ready to faint once again. Don't go fainting on me again, Haim. I don't mind carrying you around, but it would look rather awkward and give people ideas. Naruto said. It was a bad move as Hinata promptly fainted as she remembered the feel of Naruto's arms when he carried her earlier. Luckily, Shino was behind her and caught the girl before she hit the floor and placed her in her seat to allow her to recuperate. Naruto had to resist the urge to sigh and decided to make it his personal mission to help the girl overcome her shy nature. Ino found herself feeling jealous of the Hyuga girl when she heard Naruto call her Haim and admitted that he had carried her earlier after a fainting spell. She wasn't completely sure where her feelings for her fellow blonde stood, but she had a feeling that she couldn't approach him while acting like a shallow fangirl. She knew that with Naruto you had to be serious in order to get his attention if her memory of his younger self was to go by. If this was still the same Naruto she had a crush on before then, she wasn't about to let him go to Hinata without a fight. She had a lot to make up for and she could only hope that he would give her a chance. Anything further to be said was put on hold as Iruka stepped into the classroom followed by several figures. Naruto was also aware that two of them possessed the same chakra signatures that he felt before and wondered how they had left the room without him noticing. He realized the argument with Sasuke had taken his attention away from them as he focused on the two female Junin. One had long wavy, black hair that was about shoulder length and exotic crimson orbs that reminded him of Kyuubi's. She was dressed in a battle dress that seemed to be made of large bandage wrappings with stripes of black running along the center of each band. Fishnet armor covered her exposed cleavage area while a red sleeve was on her right arm while her other was missing. Bandage wrappings covered her forearms and much of her hands while he could also see some beneath her battle dress as well. Lastly, she wore black shinobi sandals while her hite-8 was on her forehead, but Naruto could see no visible weapons, so he assumed they were hidden on her person. The other had purple hair that was tied in back to resemble a pineapple, much like Shikamaru's, with hazel-colored eyes. She wore a full-body fishnet suit that stopped about mid-thigh covered by a dark tan mini-skirt and a tan trenchcoat. She also had a pendant of a fang that hung between her ample with black shinobi sandals which were covered by metal shin guards, and her hite-8 was worn of her forehead as well. He also noticed that she had a predatory smirk on her face as she gazed in his direction, which caused an involuntary shudder up his spine. He also took note of one of the male Junin that he recognized as the Sandame's son, Asuma Sarutobi. Asuma had short, slightly spiked hair with a neatly trimmed beard with dark brown eyes. He was dressed as a typical Junin with a green flak jacket over a blue shirt with sleeves rolled up to about mid-forearm with two black metal bands on his wrists. He wore blue shinobi pants with a sash that identified him as one of the Guardians of Fire, with bandages wrapped around his shins and elbows, with black shinobi sandals, and wore his hite-8 around his forehead. I'm surprised Asuma-san is motivated enough to take on a genin team, since I always assumed he was a laid-back person. Naruto thought. As the other Junin called out to their new teams, he was surprised by the words that escaped the red-eyed beauty. Team 8, come with us, the woman said. Naruto glanced at Shino, who nodded to him as he moved to pick up Hinata since she had yet to awaken. He didn't notice the dark-haired beauty narrowing her eyes at him as he lifted the Hyuga heiress into a bridal carry before descending the steps. He also didn't notice the jealous look Ino was directing at the unconscious girl. Choji and Shikamaru noticed, while knowing the blonde now had another rivalry with another girl for a boy she was interested in. Two women looked over their 3 new charges for the purple-haired beauty, spoke for the first time. Alright, meet us at Training Ground 8 in 20 minutes, Gakis, the woman said before both vanished in a shushin. Oh, man, Training Ground 8 is all the way on the other side of the village. It will take us about 25 minutes to get there since I have to carry Hinata, Naruto said. We had best hurry since I believe this is probably some sort of test. We must make a good impression if we want to be taken seriously, Shino said. Let's take the window then, Naruto said as he made a dash to the open window. He bounded out the window and began to roof hop towards their destination with Shino close on his heels. The blonde knew that he could make it in less than 20 minutes if he really wanted to, but that meant he would leave Shino behind, and he wasn't going to do so. It was better that he matched the stoic Abarame's pace so that they arrived as a team even if they end up being late. It came as a surprise to him when the Abarame suddenly passed him and couldn't hide the smirk that came to his face. Maybe he wasn't the only one that hid a lot of his potential in school, since he had a feeling that some of his classmates had held back in the academy. Picking up his pace to match Shino's, the trio was bounding across the rooftops of Konoha at low chunin speeds. A few minutes later, both shinobi landed in the clearing that represented Training Ground 8 to find both women standing there waiting for them. The training ground was mainly a clearing surrounded by forest with a lake set near the far eastern edge that was fed by a waterfall. The two women took note of the appearance of their 2 male students and noted that Naruto appeared to be perfectly fine while Shino was slightly out of breath. They were not surprised by Naruto, since any shinobi of the Leaf Chunin and above was aware of the blonde's unnatural stamina. As the 2 women continued to stare at them, Naruto decided it was time to rouse Hinata from her fainting spell. Hime, it's time for you to wake up, Naruto said in a gentle tone as he lightly shook the girl in his arms. Hinata gave a soft groan as she slowly opened her eyes, only to blink a few times as she got accustomed with the sudden sunlight. It took a few moments to clear her vision, and she blushed when she realized her predicament of once again having Naruto carry her after another one of her fainting spells. She probably would have fainted again if it was not for the red-eyed beauty clearing her throat to draw attention to her. Since Hinata-chan is awake, how about we get everything started, shall we? First, let's have some introductions so that we can learn a little about each other. I will go first to give you the idea of what I'm expecting to hear. My name is Kurenai Yuhi and I'm a recently promoted Junin. My likes are tea ceremonies, gardening and teriyaki fish. My dislikes are perverts and those that think kunoichi aren't as capable as males because of our more slender builds. My dream is to make sure that the 3 of you advance in your shinobi careers, and my specialty is genjutsu, Kurenai said. My name is Anko Mitarashi and I'm a Junin specializing in torture and interrogation. My likes are dango, red bean soup, and poisons, while I have a strong dislike for a certain hubby pedophile traitor and those that misjudge others for the crimes of others. My dreams are a little mature for you 3 Gakis and my specialty is assassination and stealth, Anko said. Okay, you first, pale eyes. Hinata blushed and took a deep breath. My name is Hinata Hyuga. My likes are my sister, cinnamon buns, and flower pressing. My likes. She paused to take another breath. I dislike people that are cruel or mean to others, and my dream is to one day unite the Hyuga main and branch families when I become clan head. My specialty is Hyuga taijutsu. I almost managed to completely control my stuttering. Maybe if I spend more time with Naruto-kun I can gain more confidence to be around him. Sunglasses, you're up next, Anko said. If Shino was offended by the comment, he didn't show it. My name is Shino Abarame. My likes are our family Kikai insects, collecting insects, and breeding new species to integrate new species into our family hive. My dislikes are pesticides, those that harm insects, and people that prejudice of others for reasons beyond their control. My dream is to surpass my father in the amount of hives I can sustain in my body and to become a strong clan head one day. My specialty is my family jutsus, Shino said while pushing up his glasses. Blondie, you're last, so make it good, Anko said with a smirk. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. My likes are training, learning new jutsus, and my precious people. My dislikes are those that judge people for a burden that they had no choice in instead of getting to know them. My dream is to become the strongest that I can possibly become so I can be Hokage and show everyone who I really am. My specialties lie in my use of kenjutsu, ninjutsu, and taijutsu. Naruto replied in his normal monotone. I've been wondering since I first saw those swords, and I would like to know who gave them to you and who trained you, Naruto-kun. Kurenai asked. I was given these swords by two very special friends, and they are an extension of my soul as I use them. I was trained by a few of the Anbu that used to watch over me when I was younger. Naruto replied. I was also wondering why the two of you were hiding with a genjutsu during class earlier. I now have a pretty good guess, but I want to be sure I'm close. Oh, I'm surprised you noticed this since Kurenai-chan is considered the best genjutsu user in all of Hai no Kuni. As to why we were there, it was because we want to get first look at our future genin. Anko replied. Because of my unique situation, I had to be extra aware of my surroundings at all times. I may not be good at using genjutsu, but I'm pretty good at detecting and dispelling them. Plus, I kind of figured that was why the two of you were there, but I'm also wondering why we were given two senseis instead of the usual one. Naruto said. I guess I can answer you on that one, but I want to know if you want Hinata and Shino to know as well. Kurenai replied. Naruto was confused by what she meant. Does she intend to tell them about me being the Jinchuriki for Kyuubi or about my mask that I used to wear? Kurenai noticed his confusion. I'm talking about you hiding your true shinobi skills for so many years. I wasn't aware that you knew of my true skill level. Naruto said. I used to be a part of your security detail, so I used to train you from time to time, but you would remember me as the hubby Anbu. I let Kurenai know since she came across your training ground one day and told me about what she saw, so I told her everything that I knew about you. Actually, you would be quite surprised by how many Junin really wanted to be your sensei over all the other genin hopefuls. Anko said. Kurenai-sensei. What do you mean by Naruto-san's true skill? He is a genin like Hinata and myself, so he shouldn't be that skilled since I saw that much of his academy instruction was sabotaged by the staff. Shino inquired. What I mean to say that since Naruto was 5 years old, he has been trained by members of Anbu because of his special situation here in the village. It was also because of this situation that he chose to hide his skill while he was attending academy for the past 6 years. I wouldn't say that Naruto is as strong as a Junin, but he is a lot stronger than most genin, and I would put him around mid-Chunin level in skills after witnessing his training from time to time. Kurenai replied with a small smile. No, what kind of special situation was Naruto-kun in? Hinata asked, shyly while glancing at her crush. I'm afraid I can't tell the two of you about that just yet, Haim. I would like to say I could trust you with my secret, but I have to be real careful when I tell people that don't already know about it. Hopefully, I will be able to tell the both of you, but I have to be sure that I can completely trust you since this secret could easily change your opinion of me. Naruto replied. Hinata and Shino nodded since Naruto had already told them the same thing earlier and hadn't changed their goal to one day learn his big secret. Anko and Kurenai shared a brief glance with each other before deciding to tell their potential students why they were here in the first place. Okay. We'll talk about that more later, but for now we have a genin exam to the three of you to prove if you have what it takes to be true genin. Anko said. What do you mean, Anko-sensei? Naruto asked. What I mean that out of the total 27 genin that graduated from the academy, that only 9 can be selected to become official Konoha genin. The academy exam was only a preliminary test to weed out those that lack the abilities to become genin. It is up to the Junin instructors to administer the final test of their own choice. This test has a 66.6% chance of failure, so you'd best bring your best if you want to prove to us that you can make it in the real world. Anko said, then smirked. At first, we were going to just merely assess your skills with a little survival exam. However, a certain Cyclops was bragging earlier that his team is a lot better than this one because he had the Uchiha on his team and was sure we would fail you three. Naruto narrowed his eyes since he remembered that the Junin for Team 7 was Kakashi Hitaki and was aware that the former Anbu captain saw him just like the rest of the ignorant shinobi and villagers. He had been part of his security detail when he was younger, and it was during those times that mobs always managed to get past the Anbu assigned to protect him and attack him. His slowly rising fury was felt by both Hirenmaru and Senbon Sakura as the two swords began to vibrate in their sheaths as a sign of their anger towards the man that would cause harm to their partner. Both women saw the look in his eyes as well as the frowns on the faces of both the Aburame heir and the normally timid Hyuga heiress. They had the perfect plan to go after Kakashi since his being a major pervert with his constant reading of Icha Paradise was a major peeve for the two since they both hated perverts. They were planning to have their team gain a little bit of revenge on Kakashi for his blatant hatred of Naruto and his disrespecting of their skills as kunoichi. Okay, I'm going to give you the mock mission that we thought up before you are given the option to accept it or not. If you choose not to, then we will go with our original plan, but if you accept it, you three will be judged by your performance. Kurenai said. Give me the mission, Kurenai-sensei. I've had an issue with Hitaki for quite some time and I want to take out a little of my frustration on him, if you know what I mean. If I know Anko-sensei the way that I think I do, then this is going to be fun for me. Naruto said, which made Anko grin at his enthusiasm. Kurenai smiled. I already knew you would agree and we made this mission with you in mind, but I want to let Hinata and Shino know before they make a decision. As you know, Kakashi is supposed to be given Team 7 his own exam to see if they pass. However, Kakashi has a habit of being at least 3 hours late for just about everything, so he won't be giving his test for about another hour and a half, which would make it about 11 before he begins. The mission that we have for you is Kakashi has a certain little orange book in his possession that he highly values. The mission is for the three of you to wait until he begins his test to attack him and retrieve the book from him, which is normally kept in his rear pouch, and return it to us. However, since he will also be testing Team 7, you are to attack while at the same time not interfere with their own attacks on him. Now, do you three Gakis think you can handle this mission? Anko asked with a sadistic grin. If you don't accept this, then I will just take my time testing you in my own special way. I think I speak for both Hinata and myself when we agree with Naruto-san in taking the mission. Shino replied while Hinata nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Anko rubbed her hands in glee. I was going to love the three of you. Now the three of you get together and plan on how you're going to take Kakashi's book. Don't forget that he isn't a Junin for nothing, so plan carefully and we wish you luck. The three genin hopefuls nodded to their senseis before gathering to make out plans on how to deal with Kakashi. Anko and Kurenai overheard a few of their plans and had to admit that some had the potential to bring Kakashi or any other Junin down, and were proud of the three. If they actually managed to accomplish their mission, then they would be more than qualified to become genin. Plus, it would be a bonus to see the great Kakashi Hitaki taken down by three genin fresh out of the academy. It was a while longer before the three decided on an initial plan as well as several backups. Surprisingly, it was Hinata that suggested their most effective plans, and the praise she received from Naruto had the girl blushing as she swelled with pride at impressing her crush. With their mission and plans ready to be set in motion, the three made their way over to Training Ground 7-7, where Team 7 was to be waiting for Kakashi to show. Anko and Kurenai maintained a reasonable distance to watch the proceeding and see how well the three could work together. 1 hour later, Hinata, Naruto, and Shino were all in position as they waited for Kakashi to make his appearance. Since he was a Junin, they made sure to suppress their chakra as far as possible in order to mask their presence. Hopefully, Kakashi wouldn't be alert enough to pay them any notice, since he would most likely just be expecting Kiba, Sakura, and Sasuke to be waiting for him. They had set up several traps to aid them while positioning themselves in a triangular formation around the training ground. Shino had released his Kikai insects in order to scout the area to give him a better overview of all the angles to attack from, while Hinata used her Byakugan to look over the entire area. Naruto used his cage bunchins to henge into various wildlife as well as rocks so he could prepare a better ambush against Kakashi if he had to. It was only a moment later when Kakashi appeared in the clearing via leaf shushin, and both Kiba and Naruto had to cover their ears when Sakura berated Kakashi about being late. They listened as he explained to the three about their objective of their test, which was to acquire a bell from him. However, the catch was that he only possessed 2 bells, and whoever didn't gain a bell when the alarm sounded at noon would be sent back to the academy. I don't understand why he would give them a test like this. I was taught that a genin teams is always a junin sensei and 3 genin under their command, unless he said it to cause dissension among them so they wouldn't work together. I have to admit that is one way to strike at their egos. Kiba and Sasuke will refuse to work together, while Sakura will only try to assist Sasuke to get a bell. Sasuke most likely believes that his teammates will only slow him down, and Kiba prefers to charge in recklessly, while Sakura's pathetic skills won't even get her close to gaining a bell. Naruto thought. As he saw the members of Team 7 go into hiding, it was time for his team to put their plan into motion. Keeping his chakra suppressed, he made his way to the edge of the clearing closest to Kakashi before charging at the unsuspecting Junin. Kakashi had pulled out his copy of Icha Icha and was enjoying his time spent when he suddenly detected a presence very close to him. It was not the chakra signature of one of his genin, but at the same time it seemed familiar and yet so different at the same time. With the presence coming from his rear, he spun around face his attacker and his eyes widened when he saw the blade of a sword coming horizontally at his head. Reacting on trained instincts, he leaned his head back so that the blade passed harmlessly mere inches above his head, but had to quickly block a kick that had been added at the end of his attacker's spin. In his off-balance state, the blow caused him to stumble back several steps before he could regain his balance. With a bit of distance between the two, he was now able to see his attacker, and his eyes narrowed in anger upon seeing Naruto. Naruto returned the gesture as he held Hiranmaru in right hand at a 45-degree angle, with his left leg back slightly with both legs bent slightly to allow him a quick spring for acceleration. His left hand was bent across his stomach in case he need to use Senbon Sakura, since he now wore her on his right side as well. I don't know why you chose to attack me like this, but I will take great pleasure in humiliating you for all my pain you caused. Kakashi snarled. Naruto tilted his head to the right. I can't be accounted for your foolishness that you can't tell the difference between the two of us, especially since she's a girl and I'm a guy, but you probably don't know that since I only just found out myself thanks to Mizuki Teme. I'm just burdened with a fate that I didn't choose, but I will continue on the path that I have chosen for myself to follow. That doesn't matter right now, since I've been wanting to test myself against a strong opponent for quite some time, and this also gives me a chance to test out Hiranmaru against someone other than my Kage Bunshins. Kakashi was confused by Naruto's behavior, since he could clearly remember that the blonde was basically a hyperactive, loudmouth idiot. The Naruto Uzumaki that stood before him seemed calm with a bit of an attitude, and his monotone way of speaking was kinda creeping him out. Plus, he wondered who or what was this Hiranmaru that he was referring to. He was about to question the blonde when he felt a slight sensation of fatigue and brought his hand up to forehead. He was shocked to see Kikai insects crawling onto him and was suddenly aware of another presence not too far away from him. He quickly began to brush them off before focusing back on Naruto. If you're wondering how the Kikai got on you, then it was when you blocked my kick. Shino had instructed a few to remain on me along my leg, and in the brief moment I kicked you they had swarmed my foot and were placed on you upon contact. I hope I didn't harm any of them, since the kick had more power than I had intended, but they seemed to be enough to do the job. Naruto replied to Kakashi's unasked question. What is going on here? Kakashi asked. Naruto didn't reply as he suddenly charged the silver-haired Junin and thrust forward with Hiranmaru in an attempt to stab him in the shoulder. Kakashi easily avoided the blow and moved into Naruto's guard to land a blow to his opposite shoulder. Naruto was prepared as he absorbed the momentum of the blow and slid into as he extended his left leg into a sweep that Kakashi easily jumped over while rising with another attempt to stab him as he completed his spin. Kakashi was ready this time as he drew 2 kunai to brush the sword strike to the side and had to jump back to avoid a punch as Naruto once again flowed with the momentum of Kakashi's counter. Deciding that he would need to take the blonde a bit more seriously, as picked up the pace and stopped playing with the Kyuubi container. Flipping both kunai into a reverse grip, he charged the blonde and began to slash at him, but was surprised Naruto was able to keep up and block him, although he could see that he was struggling. Kakashi once again slipped into Naruto's guard after having to block a quick high-low slash combo, and he capitalized on the opening with a roundhouse kick to the side of Naruto's head. However, he was surprised when Naruto burst into smoke and was even more surprised that he had been fighting against a cage bushing in the last few minutes. Although, he was barely putting forth an effort in the fight so far to believe a mere cage bushing could have taken his earlier blows without dispelling. I knew it was a bad idea for the Sandaime to let the Kyuubi be trained as a shinobi. With how strong he was before he was sealed by Minato-sensei, he's only going to get stronger if the seal on his power breaks. I can't take him out now since I have the other genin looking and would look bad if I went all out on a genin since the Sandaime would know I attacked with the intent to kill. I'll just have to bide my time until I can get the opportunity to finish what sensei started, but for now I'm just going to humiliate him. Kakashi thought with a grin beneath his mask. He searched the area for his blonde opponent but was surprised he couldn't sense neither him or his Aburame partner. The sound of sudden footsteps drew his attention to his left to find Hinata charging him with her Byakugan blazing and her left arm drawn back in preparation for a Jukin strike. Kakashi dodged the barrage of strikes that the Hyuga heiress was launching at him as he realized that the entire Team 8 genin cell was attacking him, but he wanted to know why. He was also wondering why his own genin were only watching as he was attacked and didn't bother to help, but realized they may have just been waiting for Team 8 to wear him down before they attacked. Unfortunately, he wasn't going to make it that easy as he prepared to counter Hinata after dodging another series of Jukin strikes. His planned counter was stopped as Naruto suddenly appeared at Hinata's side and the two began to work in tandem as they struck at the silver-haired Junin. Kakashi had to admit that he was impressed by the teamwork of the two as they seemed to cover any openings that the other left, so he couldn't capitalize on them. If not for his blind hatred of Naruto, he realized the blonde had more skill than he gave him credit for, but also thought if the dead last was this good then Sasuke was several levels higher in skill compared to Naruto. If only he knew how much of an overestimate of Sasuke's skill in comparison to Naruto. From their hiding places, the three genin of Team 7 could only gape in amazement at the skill on display by both Hinata and Naruto as they took on their sensei. Sasuke was glaring at Naruto as he saw that there was a lot more to the dobi than even he had realized, and the blonde would actually make a decent rival if this was even a fraction of his skill. He had to admit that while he knew was skilled in taijutsu, Naruto's style seemed to flow as he absorbed the power behind his opponent's strike and turned them into spinning counters from their momentum and always seemed to attack in an unexpected manner. He also realized that the blonde also seemed to be able to handle the sword even though he had only used for a few moments in his initial rush, but he seemed to handle like some of the kenjutsu users he had seen in the past. If only he had already awakened his Sharingan, he would copy Naruto's styles and added them to his repertoire to make himself stronger. It didn't matter that he was a comrade, since compared to an Uchiha elite like himself everyone else was inferior. Even the Hokage would be nothing to him once he gained the power of his Sharingan, and any techniques would be his for the taking. Kiba was also glaring at Naruto since he was so close to Hinata, who the Inuzuka had long since claimed as his future mate. He watched Naruto's show of skill, but in his mind he was still an alpha and his skills were far greater than Naruto's. He rationalized that since Hinata was from the prestigious Hyuga clan, she would never associate with a clanless dobi such as Naruto. He actually seemed to think that Hinata's fainting spells around the blonde was her way of displaying her disgust for Naruto, but as a blonde he was too stupid to take the hint and leave his woman alone. Soon he would take the opportunity and show Naruto that he was not in his league, and once he defeated the Uzumaki, Hinata would be eternally grateful, ridding her of his presence and shower him with her love. Lastly, Sakura was also glaring at Naruto, but hers was out of jealousy rather than awe of his skills, which she reasoned were nothing compared to her Sasuke-kun. In her mind she was angry that with Naruto's change in appearance, as his lack of interest of her was an unforgivable sin. It didn't help that her number one rival for Sasuke's affection now seemed to be interested in him, along with Hinata, who had always had a major crush on the blonde for years. She hadn't really known Naruto back before he had adopted his idiot mask, since her parents had always told her to stay away from him since he was dangerous and would hurt her. It was only when she had become friends with Ino that their friendship had lasted for only a month before her and Ino split when they began chasing Sasuke. She hadn't really realized that this was also around the same time that Naruto's personality took a complete 180. She just couldn't see why so many girls would start taking a sudden interest in Naruto after his change, but she knew that one way or another she was going to make Naruto fall for her again. She was going to remind him that his place was at her side, making her feel good about herself, and she wasn't going to let another girl take her puppy away. Meanwhile, Shino had also joined in on the attack, but he chose to keep a mid-range attack pattern since as an Aburame taijutsu wasn't his strong point. He was constantly sending his Kikai in random intervals in order to catch Kakashi off guard and drain his chakra, making it easier for Hinata and Naruto to get the book from Kakashi. Naruto had once again Hirenmaru, and Kakashi learned a quick lesson that by drawing a stalemate against the sword caused his weapons to begin to freeze. He figured that Naruto was channeling chakra through the blade, which seemed to combine Suiten and Fuuten elemental chakra in order to create a Hyeten affect. This once again made him wonder where Naruto got his swords and who created them for him, or if this was merely a part of his abilities as Kyuubi that he had regained over the years. He knew that engaging them only in taijutsu was a waste since they seemed to have solid teamwork between the three, so decided it was time for a little ninjutsu in order to even the odds. Parrying another Juken strike from Hinata and leaping away to gain some distance before Naruto could lash out him with his sword. Flashing through a series of hand seals before the three could attack him again, he brought his thumb and pointer finger up to his masked lips. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. Kakashi exclaimed, as he released a huge fireball at Hinata and Naruto. Fire release. Grand fireball technique. Naruto realized that because of the amount chakra in the attack, the jutsu was rather large, but he knew he could easily avoid it. However, he wasn't sure that Hinata would be able to avoid it, and he wouldn't allow any harm to come to his Hime. He received a mental nod from Hirenmaru as he prepared to unleash his second Zanpakuto for the first time other than in training. Soden ni Zase, Hirenmaru. Naruto intoned as he swung his sword forward as if to slash the jutsu despite the distance between them. Sit upon the frozen heavens, Ice Ring. Everyone that witnessed the move was shocked when a large icy blue dragon sprung forth from the tip of his sword with gleaming red eyes and a gaping maw. The dragon was actually larger than the fireball and completely engulfed the jutsu as it continued forward towards a still shocked Kakashi. The silver-haired Junin got over his shock and rolled to the side, but unfortunately his left leg was caught in the blast and was encased in a solid block of ice. The dragon continued past Kakashi and slammed into the ground, creating a solid spike of ice as the attack ended. With his leg frozen, Kakashi once again turned his gaze to Naruto, or more specifically the sword in his hand. He noticed that sword appeared the same with the exception of the icy vapor that surrounded the blade and the chain that connected to a small dagger that was held in Naruto's opposite hand. What was that? Kakashi asked with shock evident in his voice. Sorry, but any good shinobi doesn't just reveal their techniques to others even if they are comrades. Besides, I don't trust you in the slightest, so you definitely won't get an answer out of me. Naruto replied. Kakashi began to struggle to his right foot while trying to think of a way that would quickly thaw out his frozen leg. He wasn't allowed much time to relax as Naruto suddenly vanished from his sight as he heard a sudden swoosh sound behind him before the tip of Hirenmaru was pressed against his lower spine. He looked over his shoulder to see that Naruto was standing behind him with the same bored expression of his face he had the entire time. Sorry, but this game is over, Hitaki-san. With your leg frozen and my sword aimed for a disabling blow, you don't have many options. Especially now that Shino has managed to cover you with his Kikai and Hime is ready to disable you with a few Juken strikes. Naruto said. Kakashi realized that Naruto was right as he realized the situation that he was now in. If he made a move, he could either be struck by Hinata or Naruto and drained of his chakra by Shino, which would leave him completely helpless either way. He was still trying to figure out Kakashi Hitaki, the copy ninja, had been taken down by 3 genin fresh out of the academy. Although, he also rationalized that he was also up against the now human form of Kyuubi, whom had also cost the life of his sensei, father figure. With a heavy sigh, Kakashi knew that he had to swallow his wounded pride and accept defeat this time. Okay, the 3 of you got me, even if I only guess this was part of your genin test made by Anko and Kurenai, even if I don't know why. Kakashi said. Naruto nodded and with a mental command the ice around Kakashi's leg shattered as he was left with a sensation of numbness. It would take him a few minutes to get enough chakra flow through his leg in order to restore proper movement. The 3 genin moved out of their finishing positions and stepped back a few feet from Kakashi. Naruto grinned. The mock mission of Team 8 is completed and we will take our leave now. Kakashi didn't get chance to ask them what their mission was as the three fled from the clearing with Hinata and Shino following Naruto to where he detected Anko and Kurenai to have been hiding. The silver-haired Junin could only scratch his head in confusion before turning his attention to his own genin. Since they hadn't bothered to help him during his fight with Team 8, he was going to take out some of his pent-up frustration on them as he taught them his own version of a lesson on teamwork. It wouldn't be long before he realized the true purpose of Team 8's mission and would pass his team out of episode of extreme depression. Meanwhile, Team 8 once again found themselves in Training Ground 8 as they stood before Anko and Kurenai, whom sported proud grins. The reason why was because Naruto held Kakashi's copy of Icha Paradise in his left hand before presenting it to Anko for her to inspect. After making sure that it was the real deal before nodding to Kurenai as they congratulated their new genin cell. That was excellent work, Gakis. We were impressed by how easily the three of you seemed to work together on your first mission together against someone that was a superior opponent. I can already see that you three having the potential to go far if you continue at this rate. Anko said. The only plausible reason we seemed to be able to defeat Hitaki-san was because he underestimated us due to our status as new genin. If he were to treat us as normal enemy shinobi, we would have had a much tougher time defeating him. Shino said. You're absolutely right, even if he started to take you three seriously towards the end, but it was a little late. One aspect of being a shinobi is to deceive your enemy and draw them into a false sense of security which will cause them to lower their guard and make it easier for you to take them down. However, Hitaki has always been overconfident of his skills because of his Sharingan eye hidden beneath his headband. If he had used it to take on the three of you, I doubt you would have succeeded despite your teamwork. Anko said. Anko-sensei, how can Hitaki-san have a Sharingan if he is not a Uchiha like Sasuke-san? Hinata asked. The adrenaline in her system allowed her to stutter a lot less. Back when Kakashi was on Yondaime-sama's genin team, he was teamed with an Uchiha named Obito and a girl named Rin. During the last war, Kakashi lost his left eye in battle while Obito had been caught in a rockslide made by the enemy. Rin was a capable med-nin and at Obito's request replaced Kakashi's missing eye with Obito's recently awakened Sharingan eye. This was the day Kakashi began his legacy to be known as the Sharingan Kakashi, the man who has copied 1,000 jutsus. Kurenai replied. Naruto scoffed. That is one of the reasons I never really liked the Uchiha and their belief they were superior to everyone else. They stole the hard-earned success of other shinobi even if it was an ally and made it seem like the skill was theirs to begin with. Their Kekkei Genkei allows them to learn things so much easier than others since all they have to do is copy someone else's techniques. It's not as simple as it seems because even Kakashi has admitted that certain jutsus are next to impossible for him to have used more than once. I don't really know what he meant by that, but back when the Uchiha clan was still in Konoha, they kept the secrets of their Kekkei Genkei closely guarded. To this day many still believe that there is more to the abilities of the Sharingan than they told the Council of Konoha. Anko said, I feel sorry for the day Sasuke tries to copy a technique from me since he'll learn the hard way that some of my techniques come with a price that only I can pay. I already know that he was most likely trying to copy what I was doing in my fight with Hitaki and is probably going to demand I give him my sword or show him some of my techniques but won't get anything from me. He may get pampered by the civilians and some of the shinobi since he's the last Uchiha, but to me he's nothing more than a spoiled gaki and I have my own special way of dealing with those type of people. Naruto said with a smirk. Kurenai had to resist the urge to shudder as she realized how much Anko had trained Naruto when he was younger since the grin was reminiscent of hers whenever she was about to torture some unlucky soul in her own special way. She glanced at her close friend and saw an almost identical smirk on her face and could only mentally groan while hoping she didn't have to deal with a male and female Anko on a regular basis. She didn't need Shino and especially Hinata being traumatized by them or Hinata learning Anko's seduction techniques to use on Naruto. Although, she would be the first to admit that this new Naruto seemed a lot more attentive than he was during the academy and had to remind herself that it was merely because of his mask that he created. She clapped her hands to draw the full attention to herself before she addressed the three genin on their next activity for the day. Well, that's enough of that for today since we would like to officially announce the three of you as the new Team 8 under our command. As a reward for such a complete success, we will take you three out to eat. While we're at it, you can explain your plan to us and we will give you some advice on ways you could have improved even if it wasn't by much since your teamwork was spectacular. Kurenai said. The three nodded and followed the two women as they made their way back towards Konoha's business district. They all laughed with how excited Anko became when she decided for everyone they were going to the dango shop and was walking at a rushed pace since they chose not to roof-hop so they could talk more along the way. As Naruto walked alongside his larger group of comrades, he realized that his list of precious people were growing and wondered what other surprises should he expect in the near future. He knew that as long as he had his team to back him, he would face any enemy that stood before him as he continued on his path to greatness and show everyone that ever tried to put him down their mist. That's all for my now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.